week later, Davey Allison found out how black and white racing is as he chased his father Bobby to the finish line and then into victory lane at the Daytona 500. Neil Bonnet spelled it out in black and white when some thought this Bud's for you. By Quaker State Motor Oil, the big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. By Goodyear Eagle Tires, Goodyear because there really is a difference. And by Pontiac, America's road company, we build excitement. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham for the Goodwrench 500, our first Winston Cup telecast of 1988 and the third on the Winston Cup Trail for 1988. Set back, relax, and get ready for some exciting racing. In the booth with me for today's race, first of all, two-time Winston Cup champion Ned Jarrett. And Ned, we had Daytona, a super speedway, short track at Richmond. Now we're on a medium-sized track.
And one of the tougher tracks on the circuit. They call this the Rock, appropriately named because it is one of the tougher tracks on the circuit. It's very demanding of the drivers, both physically and mentally. We'll see a variety of driving styles here this afternoon. We'll see some drivers running way high next to the wall. Others will be able to keep their cars low on the racetrack, which makes for a lot of side-by-side racing and very challenging for the drivers and the teams and exciting for the fans. Now, they had to run a carburetor restrictor place at Daytona, which slowed the cars down. The drivers like the response of the throttle, so they have the full carburation here, and they like that.
Also in the booth with me will be the head of research and development for Hendrick Motorsports, Gary Nelson. Would you consider this, Gary, a handling track, a power track, what?
Well, Rockingham is a track that brings into play almost all aspects of Winston Cup racing. Handling probably the key. There's over a half-mile of high bank turns here. Endurance, it's always a long, over 4-hour race. Brakes and horsepower are also important. Strategy is sometimes one of the biggest factors. You know, it's almost like a major league chess game out there sometimes. Fuel mileage, sometimes a factor. But the real thing is the drivers and crews must remain sharp, especially in the late stages of the race when those small little tweaks and adjustments that are so necessary to make the car run competitively, those are the things that can keep you out of the winner's circle, have you making up excuses for your sponsor and owner.
Well, one team that has put all those aspects together, at least here this weekend, the Bill Elliott team. With more on that story, here's the editor of Stock Car Racing Magazine in the pit area, Dr. Dick Berggren.
Well, Bob, Bill Elliott's team does have it all together here at Rockingham. Brother Ernie is one of the best engine men in the business, and you need a strong engine for this speedway. Their Ford Thunderbird is especially aerodynamically suited for Rockingham, and Elliott really knows his way around. He says he's going to drive this car wherever it wants to go on the speedway, while others of his competitors have set up to run high or low. 3 out of the top 4 qualifiers are Ford Thunderbirds. But a lot of the heavy hitters are a long way from where I am standing at the pole position. They're way back in the field with Jerry Punch. Jerry, how come there's so many heavies back there?
Well, Dick, you know, in every sporting event, everyone would like to sit on the front row. Well, that's not always possible. Some people have to sit back in the bleachers, back in the euchre seats. Now, normally, the rear of this field is for rookies and less experienced drivers, but not so today. Take a look at who's back here. Defending Winston Cup and Goodwrench 500 champion Dale Earnhardt is here. The winners at both Daytona and Richmond, Bobby Allison and Neil Bonnet are back here. Veterans like Benny Parsons, Morgan Shepherd, and Buddy Baker, they're all starting back in the pack. Now, when asked about being concerned about starting so far back in the field, Earnhardt said, hey, if I can't get to the front in 4.5 hours, I don't deserve to be there. You know, if our buddy Dick Vitale were here, he'd say it's a QT. The quality time is very important for these drivers. They will give you quality time when that green flag drops. A fellow who's given a lot of quality time over the years, my colleague, Larry Newberg.
Thank you, Jerry. You know, we at ESPN through the years have endeavored to bring you, the racing fan at home, much closer to the racetrack. We've done that through our track facts and our innovative features, and Pit Central is just the next logical step for us. We will be keeping in contact with the drivers through their radios. We will be computer assisted. We will have a car here whose body has been removed, so some of those finer technical points come up, we can point them out to you. And never before has this been more important because parity has arrived in NASCAR Winston Cup racing.
All right, thank you, Larry. For the first time in a long time, Fords have the edge as far as manufacturers are concerned. 13 Fords in the field, 12 Chevys. And we'll be back to introduce to you the 41-car starting lineup for today's Goodwrench 500 in just a moment.
We know some guys who get up early in the morning just to rock and roll. Ride. Racing fans, this bud's for you.
Speed World on location today at North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham, and the field is on the track for 3 warm-up laps before we get the green. Here's a description of the racetrack that they'll be competing on this afternoon. It's a 1-mile oval, the banking between 22 and 25 degrees, 1,200-foot straightaway. The length of the race, 500 miles. They should be able to go about 100 miles before a fuel stop, so we are anticipating about 5 pit stops if we don't have too many yellows. Now the starting lineup for today's race. First of all, on the pole position, qualifying at 146.612 miles an hour in the number 9 Coors Motorcraft Ford is Bill Elliott from Dawsonville, Georgia. Outside the first row will be Alan Kulwicki in car number 7, the Xerox Ford. In the second row, the number 26 machine of Ricky Rudd from Chesapeake, Virginia, and alongside will be Davey Allison from Hueytown, Alabama in the Hamilton Oil Ford number 28. The third row, Ken Schrader from Fenton, Missouri, car 25, and alongside will be the number 27 Kodiak Pontiac of Rusty Wallace. Going to row number 4, it's Dale Jarrett in car number 29, the Hardee's Oldsmobile, and Jeff Bodine in the Levi Garrett Chevrolet car 5. The fifth row has Harry Gant from Taylorsville, North Carolina in the number 33 Skoll Food Lion Chevrolet, and Terry Labonte from Corpus Christi, Texas, the Budweiser number 11 Chevy. Going to row number 6, it's the Tide Chevrolet driven by Darrell Waltrip, car number 17, and then the Stroh's Light Ford driven by Mark Martin, who won the Grand National race here yesterday. The car number is 6. In the seventh row will be Kyle Petty from High Point, North Carolina, the Citgo Ford number 21, and Sterling Marlin from Columbia, Tennessee in the Piedmont number 44. In row number 8 for this afternoon's contest will be Brett Bodine in number 15, the Crisco Motorcraft Ford. And to his outside will be Bobby Hillen in number 8 Miller High Life Buick. In the ninth row will be Ken Bouchard, number 10 the Whitcomb Racing Ford, and Phil Parsons beside him, number 55 Crown Skoll Classic Olds. In the 10th row will be Lake Speed from Jackson, Mississippi in number 83 the Wins Kmart Oldsmobile, and then Richard Petty, the veteran from Randleman, North Carolina in the STP Pontiac number 43. In the 11th row will be Ernie Urban in number 2 and defending race champion Dale Earnhardt. The 12th row has Bobby Allison, the Daytona winner in number 12, and Dave Marcus in 71. In the 13th row, rookie Mickey Gibbs and Rick Wilson in car number 4. The 14th row consists of Buddy Baker in number 88 and rookie Ed Pim in 98. The 15th row consists of number 31 Brad Teague and 75 Neil Bonnet, the winner at Richmond. In row number 16 will be Eddie Birchwell in car number 23 and Benny Parsons in number 90. The 17th row consists of Rick Jeffrey in number 67 and Jimmy Means in 52. Morgan Shepherd in 97 and Derry Cope in 68 will make up row number 18. In the 19th row, Michael Waltrip in number 30 is Chevy. He wrecked his Pontiac earlier, and David Pletcher in number 03. The 20th row consists of Mark Stahl in 82 and Charlie Baker in 93. And finally, in row number 21 will be the number 22 car, the Hesco Exhaust Chevrolet, driven by Steve Moore from Carrollton, Georgia. So those are the starters in today's race. We have 2 in-car cameras that will be functioning for you throughout the afternoon. We're now in the Hardee's Oldsmobile that will be driven by Dale Jarrett, who will start 7th in today's event. And also in the number 31 car, we'll be riding alongside of Brad Teague as he tries to move up from the 29th starting position. Here comes the field. The green flag is out, and the Goodwrench 500 is on.
Elliott wasted no time in moving out front. He got a good jump on the field, though.
He sure did. He's opened up about a full car length advantage as the trailers go through turn number 1. The leaders are already in turn number 3. And here comes Bill Elliott, pursued by Alan Kulwicki. Elliott is going to lead lap number 1. Ricky Rudd running 3rd in the field. Then Eddie Birchwell has Rusty Wallace has passed Davey Allison as Davey begins to drop back on the field just a little. The first of our cars are running right together on the racetrack as they come down to complete lap number 2.
Davey Allison got caught on the outside, and apparently his car was not working too well up there early in the race. Several cars did get by him. He has fallen in line now, though. Most of the cars at the front are running single file.
Elliott and Kulwicki beginning to pull away now from the third place car of Ricky Rudd as they go down the backstretch. There's Elliott sending the car into turn number 3 now. Drafting, of course, was very important at Daytona. Wasn't so much at Richmond, the most recent race. Gary, how about drafting here?
Well, I think drafting is playing a lesser role here. You can see already the cars are stringing out. They're not slipstreaming each other. It looks like it's more handling at this moment. They're waiting for the track to work in and find out what the best route is.
Dale Earnhardt is on the move as he has now moved to the rear of the car driven by Ken Bouchard.
Bouchard, of course, a rookie on the circuit this year. His brother Ron Bouchard ran for a number of years on the Winston Cup circuit, but no longer is competing.
And right behind Dale Earnhardt is the Bobby Hillen car, and beside him is Lake Speed. And behind Lake Speed, the yellow car, number 4, is Rick Wilson.
Well, I can tell you that would be a heck of a position to know that Dale Earnhardt is coming up to the pack. Everybody's looking in their mirrors. They know he's coming.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time before he moves up, although it's very difficult here in the early going with all of the traffic out there, but he is picking them off one by one as Bill Elliott continues to lead the field, and Alan Kulwicki in second position. Rudd still running third, then Rusty Wallace and Ken Schrader. Now Earnhardt moving to the inside of Ken Bouchard in turns number 1 and 2. Bouchard, though, is holding off the challenge, at least for the moment, as Larry Newber is in Penn Central.
Well, Bob, Ned, and Gary, it was very much stressed in the drivers' meeting today by Dick Beatty that no one is going to win Rockingham in the first 400 laps of this race. That was the term that was given. They really stressed not so much to be cautious, but to be aware and alert, because things happen very quickly at Rockingham. And Gary, as you pointed out at the top of the show, this really is one of the most dangerous places on the circuit. It's not really a super speedway, but it's a long ways from a short track. And by the way, one comment about Davey Allison. He was slow in the beginning laps at Richmond a couple weeks ago. They said it was the Hoosier tires. He is not on Hoosier tires today.
As a matter of fact, there are 14 cars in the field on Hoosier tires. And now we go back to the battle for that third position between Ricky Rudd and Rusty Wallace. Rudd in the green number 26 and Rusty Wallace in the white and green number 27.
And we're already seeing some of that high groove running. Rudd's car apparently not staying too low. Rusty Wallace was able to stay low, but he was not able to make a pass then. But we'll see if it works to his advantage now as they go into turn 1. Wallace stayed right down on the bottom of the racetrack. Rudd's car won't stay down there, and he pulls up beside.
That car, Rusty Wallace, sure does look good. He's sticking on the bottom real good. He's feeling out Ricky Rudd at the moment, but I'm going to watch him.
Rusty has looked good in all of the races so far this year in the Winston Cup Trail, as a matter of fact.
Very aggressive race driver. Has 4 wins to his credit, 2 in 1986, 2 in 1987.
And both of those wins last year were on road courses, so he would very much like to put together a medium or super speedway type win, because his 2 wins the previous year were on short tracks.
Here he is now trying to make a move on Ricky Rudd as they go into turn 3. Rudd's car again drifting to the high side. Wallace able to stay right down on the bottom of the racetrack.
Gary, how long does it take a team to sort things out and know exactly how they want their car set up?
Oh, it's a never-ending struggle. You know, the track is always changing. The tires wear as you go, and the track comes to you sometimes. Sometimes it goes away from you. You have to be prepared to just make a last-minute adjustment.
Ricky Rudd in number 26 still running third, and Rusty Wallace behind as Bill Elliott continues to lead the Goodwrench 500. He's pursued a few car lengths back by Alan Kulwicki. Back with more from The Rock. Laps completed at Rockingham, North Carolina in the Goodwrench 500, and Bill Elliott continues to lead in the number 9 Coors Motorcraft Ford. Behind him is Alan Kulwicki. Third in the field is Ricky Rudd, fourth Rusty Wallace, and fifth at the moment is Davey Allison.
Bob, we're beginning to see some of the cars that are moving very high in the turns early. We saw Ricky Rudd there a little bit earlier, but that's working for him pretty good now because he's pulled away from Rusty Wallace a little bit, but behind them, there's some cars that are really going high. Here's Earnhardt, one of those that's using the high groove, moving around Richard Petty.
Boy, he's using the real high groove. That car a little bit sideways, it looked like to me there in the third turn, but Dale is picking him off. I believe he is now up to 14th or 15th position on the field. He started 22nd, and boy, he's really using that high groove.
Well, that groove is going to get better and better for him as they wear off the sand and all the debris that collects up there. More and more cars are going to run up there.
Look how high that car is moving up toward the ball. Might that indicate that he's not happy with the way the handling is set up?
Well, this car obviously looks loose. The back wheels don't follow the front ones. They're outside, and you can tell he's working the steering wheel quite a bit. But I don't know. I think he kind of likes it that way.
Takes guts to run up there this early in the race, though, Gary, but he certainly has plenty of those.
Definitely.
That's something that he has no shortage of whatsoever. Dale Earnhardt in the Goodwrench Chevrolet, trying to move up through the field after having to settle for a 22nd starting position in this race. There is Elliott, and there is Alan Kulwicki. First and second. Oh, we have a crash. Richard Petty has hit the wall in turn number 2 between 1 and 2. Slides down the banking. It appears as if the car has suffered heavy damage on the right side, and Richard Petty, who of course suffered a terrible accident at the Daytona 500, however made a strong comeback at the Richmond race, has now been involved in another crash, bringing out the first caution period of the afternoon.
Tough break for Richard. In fact, Bob, he was one of my favorites going into this race. In the last practice session yesterday afternoon, this car was running very, very strong. Let's watch it now as it goes into turn 1. Rick Wilson down on the inside, and it looks like they get together as they do. As they go into that turn, it sends Petty into the outside wall.
Boy, that was a hard hit. You could just see it. It was the fastest place on the racetrack.
And some very evasive moves by a couple of other cars that were able to turn left and get down below him without T-boning him.
Somewhat high, somewhat low, but everybody got by Richard Petty without making contact with him. You can see the safety crews and the medical personnel on the scene finding out if Richard has been injured, and we have Terry Labonte moving in for an early pit stop, and several others are also coming in, including Bobby Allison and Brett Bodine and Lake Speed.
Terry was sort of going backwards in the field. That car was not handling for him. He had lost a number of positions. You can see one of the crew members reaching inside, making a chassis adjustment as they changed the right side tires on the Budweiser Chevrolet.
Terry Labonte started 10th. There is Bobby Allison, who was another one of those guys that had to start from the middle of the pack. He started 23rd. Allison now in the pits, and so is his teammate, Bobby Hillin Jr.
Well, right now, it's not really a scheduled pit stop. 19 laps into the race, it's very unscheduled to stop this early.
There is Richard Petty, who you can see has got out of the car and is surveying the damage. He was still limping quite a bit before the race as he was walking to his car, but he doesn't appear to have suffered any additional injuries in this crash that has brought out the caution lap on lap number 17 here at Rockingham. We'll be back with more right after these messages. The pace car is leading the field as we are under caution here with now 22 laps completed. The reason we are under the caution is because of an accident up in turn number 1 that involved Richard Petty. He made contact with the outside wall after possibly making contact with Rick Wilson. And here's another look at it.
You see them going into the turn, Petty coming down a little bit, Wilson going up naturally as he goes into the turn. They make contact, and it sends Petty into the outside retaining wall.
Well, let's check in with our pit reporters. First of all, Dick Berggren.
Well, I'm with Dale Inman. He's crew chief. You've been talking to Richard. Is he okay?
Yeah, the spotter from on top of the tower said he was out of the car and everything looking at it, but he said the car was beyond repair.
So you're all done for the day?
Well, it looks like it. I guess we'll head home early.
Well, you guys have had a tough year.
Well, it's just getting started, but we'll keep plugging at it and see what we can do.
These guys never give up. Jerry Punch, what's going on at your end of the pits?
Well, Terry Labonte just came in a few minutes ago and pitted in the Budweiser Chevrolet, and I'm with crew chief Tim Brewer. And Tim, why the early pit stop?
Well, Jerry, you know, you're in a situation, you're running like 26-second laps. You get on a bad set of tires or the chassis is not quite right, you get yourself lapped here in a heartbeat. So we decided to go ahead and, you know, change the tire stagger configuration on the car and, you know, try to get the car dialed in early for the race.
Well, Ned had mentioned upstairs that Terry was losing some valuable time and backsliding in the field. The car just not really handling well for him.
Well, the thing's tight, Jerry. It's real tight from the middle of the corner out. And here you'll tear up a left rear tire if you get yourself in that situation. You know, it's one of those things. Yesterday afternoon was maybe a little bit warmer. Today is pretty cool. You need to make those adjustments real quick because you need to be really good in the middle of this race.
Well, a timely caution and a timely pit stop for Terry Labonte. Let's go to Pit Central and Larry Newber.
Well, not only do you have to make those adjustments in the middle of the race today, but the weather might change. The sun is beginning to break through. We still have a cloud cover, but that could really have a dramatic effect on the team setups. Now, Ned, you and I were watching Earnhardt. I heard you guys talking about why is Dale running so high. We were watching him in the last practice session yesterday afternoon, and I suggested that is where Dale wants to run. He was up there, he was running loose, he was running free. He looked like he was having a good time, but he was really working hard. In terms of lap times, you heard Brewer mention, well, 26 seconds, that's not going to do it. Everybody was out with their race setups late yesterday afternoon, and you had to be below 25.5 to be in the hunt, and it looked like 25.2 or 3 was like on the outer edge of running in the front group.
So the petty caution has given some teams a chance to come in early and make those adjustments and possibly get their car running better. We're at Rockingham, North Carolina for the Goodwrench 500. Hardy's race cam in the car being driven by Dale Jarrett, Ned's son, and the word is, Ned, that he may be having a slight tire problem, but has chosen to stay out there and not come in to change.
I would guess that it is probably the stagger is not the way that he would like it, but he's up there in 8th position right now. Doesn't want to give up that track position at the moment to make a pit stop.
Well, you know, stagger is such a big deal here at Rockingham. You've got to have it just on the money. So we'll have to see what he does next with it. They're going under green now.
Dale and the others stand on the accelerator as the green comes back out from Harold Kinder, and the race resumes on lap number 25. It is still Bill Elliott taking charge of this field as the green comes back out with Alan Kulwicki second, and Ricky Rudd, Rusty Wallace, and Davey Allison as they go down the backstretch and into turn number 3 once again. Well, Richard Petty was involved in a crash up in turn number 1, but he apparently is okay. Let's check the specifics as we go to the pit area. Here's Dick.
Richard, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. It just stove my foot up a little bit more, but it's going to be all right.
You got quite a limp. Is it the same ankle that you hurt at Daytona, or is this a different one?
No, this is the same one. What happened when I got hit from behind, the car got sideways, and that's the first thing you do is put on brakes, try to, you know, get it rode down. Then I hit the wall, and it did. It just stove it up a little bit more.
Any of this stuff want to slow you down, or are you just all ready to go back to Atlanta?
Tease me off, makes me that much madder, make it work that much harder.
That's Richard Petty. He's okay, fortunately.
And that is exactly the philosophy that Richard Petty has. All these downs that he has had recently just gives him more incentive to stay at it and to get another win under the belt. There's a great battle for third here between Ricky Rudd and Rusty Wallace. Wallace is on the bottom side of the racetrack, and Ricky Rudd is up high. The battle for third position goes on at the line. Rusty Wallace has Ricky Rudd. We'll see what happens if they go into the corner. Yesterday in the Grand National race, which was won by Martin, we saw that the higher groove was where to be, but not necessarily here in the Winston Cup, as Rudd has lost that third position, and Harry Gant has come in for a tire change on the right side.
An unscheduled pit stop certainly for him. He must have had a tire going down. Harry Gant's bad luck continues. He's been having bad luck for a long, long time.
As a matter of fact, bad luck yesterday in that Grand National race. He was leading when he ran out of fuel, giving Martin the victory.
He lost a lap on that pit stop, so he has a lot of catching up to do.
It appeared to be a right rear flat tire that looked like it was low on air. It wasn't completely flat.
Rusty Wallace now has taken over that third position from Ricky Rudd.
So Wallace is now in third position, Rudd in fourth, as Bill Elliott continues to set the pace. He has led all laps so far, and we have completed 30. As a matter of fact, beginning to pull away now from Alan Kulwicki just a little bit.
Well, that car of Bill Elliott seems to be able to run low better than anybody else. Almost all of the others are sliding up a little.
Yeah, he's staying right down to the bottom of the racetrack. There are 4 lanes here separated by some paint. And you can watch Bill Elliott sometimes in that very lowest groove.
Here is a pack of cars that is really doing some hard racing. Dale Jarrett right in front of Darrell Waltrip. Here's Kyle Petty down on the inside. Dale Earnhardt is in that same group. A big group of automobiles there for that in fourth position.
Being led, of course, by Darrell Waltrip in the Tide Machine, number 17. But a good battle is going on as we're looking through the rear window of the Dale Jarrett car to Darrell Waltrip and the others that are following. That black car belongs to Dale Earnhardt as he continues to move toward the front.
And look how high he goes. Well, that time he didn't go quite as high into the turn. He's not going quite as high through turns 1 and 2 as he is through 3 and 4, but every once in a while it looks like he's going to clip the wall.
Well, that was close that time. That camera shot is really a good one. That's exactly what Dale Jarrett sees in his rear view mirror.
You can certainly pick out the Darrell Waltrip car. That thing shows up well on TV, though.
There's also a battle going on between the number 44 car, that's Sterling Marlin. Behind him is Rick Wilson and Neil Bonnet, and that's also Mark Martin. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, Sterling Marlin said this morning that today is his best chance in his entire career to win a Winston Cup race. He was one of 2 drivers who was fastest in the last practice yesterday afternoon. That last practice will most closely approximate what the Speedway will be like in the last 50 or 100 laps today. The other guy who was almost as fast as him, Neil Bonnet. They have both set their cars up to run the race the same way. Down low on the bottom, they are both on Hoosier tires. They both think they can win. Larry Newber, what do you think?
Well, Dick, I was about to comment that this is a bit of a microcosm of what's going on with that tire story. Rick Wilson, that bright yellow car also on your screen, is another one of the Hoosier tire advocates. 13 started this race, 28 cars on Goodyears, and they all to a man said, hey, we're going to give up qualifying. Our Hoosiers won't qualify as quickly as the Goodyears, but we think that when we get into the race, they will be a strong tire, particularly if there is a long green flag segment. They're moving up on the Jarrett machine and the Kyle Petty car right now through the Tri-Oval.
And Sterling Marlin with the rear end of that car a little sideways as they came out of the 4th turn. 3 wide battle for position going on here. Rick Wilson, Dale Jarrett, and Sterling Marlin. And Jarrett now begins to pull away just a little bit.
Wilson's car seems to be sticking well on the inside. You see the traction that he gets for just a moment as he heads off of the turn, then down the straightaway. They're about even, but Wilson should have the advantage when they get into turn 1.
Wilson on the low side. Jarrett, however, staying right alongside him, but now Jarrett with that higher line loses 1 position as Neil Bonnet is now between Wilson and Jarrett.
You can tell he's having to fight the steering wheel quite a bit, so apparently the tire stagger is not quite right, and we did hear that he had a little bit of a handling problem, and they would try to correct it when he makes his pit stop with the tire stagger.
Back up front, meanwhile, it is Bill Elliott and Alan Kowicki running 1st and 2nd. And Alan Kowicki now has closed in the gap just a little bit, narrowing it to about 1 car length. We'll be back in a moment to Rockingham. ESPN Speed World's first Winston Cup telecast of 1988. The Goodwrench 500 at North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham. The situation is Bill Elliott leads this event with 44 laps having been completed. He has led all laps so far. Alan Kowicki is running in that 2nd position. 3rd is Rusty Wallace. 4th is Ricky Rudd. And 5th is Davey Allison. 1 caution period. Richard Petty hit the wall in turn 1. He's okay.
Well, you know, we're beyond the decision point right now. Everybody started with a full tank of gas. Usually it's 1/3 of a tank of your fuel to be gone before you decide whether you're going to pit on the next caution. That would be around lap 30. We're up to 45 now. Any caution from here to lap 100 or so, everybody will be in the pit for 4 tires. They should know what to do to their chassis now. They've been feeling out the different grooves, trying to decide whether to run low or high. It's going to be pretty interesting to see who comes out of the next round of pit stops running on what grooves.
And usually there is a difference once they make those pit stops. You'll see a car that shouldn't even keep up, falls back through the field, and once they make those adjustments, then he's a real hero. He's able to pass everybody on the racetrack.
And we have seen numerous grooves out there in the first 40-some laps of this race, as some are running right up by the wall, others are running down on the bottom, and some running in the middle. It's just a great opportunity to watch exactly how these drivers negotiate the track. There's the number 55 car of Phil Parsons. Watch it for a little bit of smoke. It was evident last lap, but it could have been tire smoke. What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, most likely was. He looked like he got a little high and was really standing on it coming off the corner and lit up the tires. It'll take a couple laps for that to cool down if he realizes it.
And he's one of those running the upper groove. That's Morgan Shepherd in the 97 car on the bottom of the racetrack. And there's Kyle Petty that still is moving around.
Kyle trying to run the low groove, and the other car is running the high groove. It just depends on how the car is working as to which groove that you try to run. But the track is very slippery. This pavement gets slick in a hurry, and as the tires heat up, it causes them to skate over the track.
Boy, I tell you, that 97 car is running good. He's moved up from 35th. He's running, what, 13th right now, and he's moving along. It looks like he's running pretty darn strong.
Of course, that's Morgan Shepherd, who was a great factor here in the race yesterday in the Goodwrench 200 Busch Grand National race. Morgan has a lot of experience on this racetrack. He knows how to set a race car up to drive to his own liking, and that's very important on a track like this where handling is such a characteristic.
Isn't this the racetrack, guys, that they put down bear grease once in a while to seal it?
Well, they used to. Of course, when we're talking about bear grease, we're talking about an asphalt sealer. They haven't done it since they paved this track 2 or 3 years ago. But I wouldn't be surprised. The pavement is getting a little worn now. And when we see those drivers running right up next to the wall, they're running on basically new pavement up there that hasn't been run on that much. And that's the reason they do it. They want to run their right side tires up there where the pavement is a little bit newer. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see, and maybe not this year, next year, that we'll see some of that sealer put on there, and as the drivers referred to it, the bear grease.
I remember them doing that several years ago, and the drivers came here and just said, oh boy, this place is really slick. Now, back here is Rusty Wallace, Ricky Rudd, and Davey Allison. This is 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And these guys have been running right together for several laps now. That's Davey Allison back there in the Ford, Ricky Rudd's Buick, and of course Rusty Wallace's Pontiac. We talked earlier about the parity as far as manufacturers are concerned. Here's a perfect example of that.
But you can see when 3 cars are running close together like that, 27 of Rusty Wallace and Ricky Rudd and Davey Allison, but there's a big gap to the next position ahead of them. So that tells you that Rusty Wallace is trying his best, and he's got an open track, but he can't close that gap. And the other guys are maybe being held up a little bit by Rusty at this point.
Ricky Rudd, who thought that he had won the Richmond race, but a recheck of the scoring indicated that he indeed had finished in 2nd position. But that Richmond racetrack that he raced on is a lot different from the Rock, and we had an opportunity to talk to him about how he drives this track in the early going.
Well, the biggest thing at Rockingham, you just really have to realize that you're going to be behind that wheel for 5 hours long, so there's no sense in getting in any big hurry. If you've got a man in front of you that you've been working trying to get around, it's not like you go to some of these other tracks, say like a Richmond like we were at last week. Naturally, you want to get by and go on if the guy's holding you up, but it's not the end of the world if you're losing a 1/10 of a second. You need to really make sure that you set the guy up and you pass him at a time that you're not jeopardizing taking a chance on wrecking you or the other guy, because 4.5, 5 hours long behind a race car, you got plenty of time to race these guys all day, and the race is not that critical in the early stages. It's nice to run up front and have track position, but it's not the end of the world, say if you're stuck back about 5th or 10th, as long as you've got the leader in sight. And that's pretty much what I gauge off of. As long as I've got the leader in sight on the same straightaway. If he's not in sight on the same straightaway, then it's time to start racing a little harder, making sure you can keep him in sight.
You know, that's interesting, because when he was saying that you don't want to take any chances or pass somebody, he was passing Rusty Wallace for 3rd.
I guess he figured he was not taking a chance, and he wanted to get the numerical order in order. His car's number 26, Rusty Wallace is 27, and Davey Allison 28, so he said, let's get it on the scoreboard the right way.
And you know, right behind that trio is the number 25 car of Ken Schrader.
Well, that would be interesting if 25 got in front of those 3. That would make it perfect order.
Almost a straight.
That's right. There is Rudd moving past some slower traffic, moving by Morgan Shepherd, who was a pole sitter at Richmond, but has not had it together this weekend. And look at who's behind the number 25 car. That's Dale Earnhardt, and he's still way up there by the wall.
He's found himself a groove up there that seems to be working well for him. And he continues to move up slowly. Not as fast as we see Dale Earnhardt move up in a lot of races, but he also is being very careful, even though it looks like that he's sort of driving wild as he goes up next to that wall. But he's being careful. He knows that this is a long race. He can't take any unnecessary chances, but he's found the groove there that he does like, and he's picking them off one at a time.
It depends on who you're comparing him to. Careful for Dale Earnhardt is pretty wild for most everybody else.
Good point.
say he has moved up already to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th position after having started 22nd. So he's caught basically the leaders, although there is quite a separation between second Alan Kulwicki and third Ricky Rudd.
Well, it seems like Dale Earnhardt has set his car up on the loose side. I think that most teams generally try to go a little bit more conservative at the beginning and then try and hope the track comes to them. They normally do. The track normally gets looser as the race goes. But Dale Earnhardt, being the driver that we all know he is, he goes for it right from the beginning.
And he's staying at times right above the last white line, and that normally is no man's land.
Now he moves to the high side of Ken Schrader in car number 3. Look at how high Earnhardt is.
Boy, at the same time, that 25 car,
Boy, Ken was on the low side and shot almost right in front of Dale Earnhardt as the cars came out of turn number 4. Behind all of this is Rick Wilson in the Kodak car and Larry Nuber in pit central.
Well, Dale Earnhardt may have moved up through the pack, but Bob, as you just mentioned, it's very interesting that Rick Wilson, who started 26th, that's 2 rows behind Dale Earnhardt, has followed him through, and Rick Wilson has moved up to 8th from his 26th starting position.
Earnhart is moving through the field like a hot knife through butter. He is passing Davey Allison at the moment. Let's go back and replay the situation. Now watch Schrader on the low side as they come off the 4th corner.
And they're 2 or 3 car lengths apart, but Schrader's back end gets loose as he comes off of that turn. He does a good job of getting hold of it, but he almost gets up into Allison and Earnhardt as he comes off the turn.
But that was a good piece of driving by Ken Schrader to come from that low groove and just almost hit those 2 cars and still keep going. It didn't look like he ever let up.
The Fords are still up front. Bill Elliott in the number 9 car and Alan Kulwicki is second. The separation is just that much as we have completed 62 laps out of 492 at Rockingham. Back at North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham, where the race continues, and Bill Elliott leads over Alan Kulwicki. As the leaders now are approaching some of the slower traffic as they come off of corner number 4. Right ahead of leader Bill Elliott is the number 52 machine of Jimmy Means. Here's Dick Berggren.
Well, Bob Jenkins, it's awfully tough to talk down here, and I just handed a clipboard with a little note on it to Ernie Elliott. And the note said, is the car pushing? Is it loose? Is it neutral? Ernie just touched his headset as if to say, gee, Bill hasn't told me anything. And then he grabbed the clipboard out of my hand and he wrote a little note on it. And it says, probably all 3. Cherry punch?
Well, Dale Earnhardt is running up high. We talked earlier in the race, and that's by design, not by accident. We're with his car on Richard Childers. And Richard, you fellas are running up toward the wall. Why is that?
Well, you know, we worked this week trying to get our car to work up high. The racetrack's just a little better up there, and cars are going to slip and slide anyway, so we just wanted to make our car work better up there. It's a little bit easier on the tires also.
Well, that's a very good variable today. The tires could be a deciding factor. Easier on the tires, better racetrack, and the man running into fuses in the wall is Dale Earnhardt.
Boy, it is noisy down there, isn't it? Look at Neil Bonnet. Good heavens, where does he come from?
He's been coming up through the field following Earnhardt to a degree, but on the inside of the racetrack as opposed to the outside of the racetrack for Dale Earnhardt. And Richard Childers was right. When you run up there, the car doesn't slide as much. As a result, it doesn't heat the tires up as much or wear as much rubber off. But Neil Bonnet's making the inside work for his car.
And speaking of tires, Neil is one of those on Hoosier tires for this race, and so is Rick Wilson, who has passed Dale Earnhardt and moved into 3rd position. Now here's a good race though, 4-4. That is Dale Earnhardt and Neil Bonnet going at it.
Well, that is quite a race. You know, they're only about 5 seconds behind the leader, that group right there. So they've come a long way and passed a lot of cars, and still within 5 seconds of the leader. That tells you they're running pretty strong.
They certainly are. Now, here's 2 drivers that like to hunt together. They like to race together. They don't mind mixing it up with each other. But as they go into the turn, they sort of separate because Bonnie's taking the very low line, Earnhardt the outside line, and it worked best for Bonnie that time on the low side.
I think Neil just raised his hand as he went by Dale Earnhardt saying, see ya, partner.
You know, it's one of the stories you hear over and over in the garage where Neil and Dale will race side by side like that, and after the race they'll get out and say, was that a grin on your face or a smile, or were you just making fun of me? So it's hard to imagine doing that at those kind of speeds, but those guys are that comfortable racing against each other.
Larry's in pit central, keeping track of the tire situation.
Well, Bob, you mentioned that both Neil Bonnet and Rick Wilson were on Hoosier tires. Here's why it's a significant part of the race story right now. The drivers to a man will tell you that the Hoosier tires don't necessarily get better as the green flag laps wear on, but they stay the same. Why that is significant is that the Goodyears go away a little bit. And all the drivers will tell you who started the race on Hoosiers, as we mentioned earlier, that they're not that concerned about qualifying, but they know they're going to get better the longer the green flag segments are. Traditionally, there are so many yellows here at Rockingham, we didn't think that would be an advantage. But we've had a nice, long green flag segment, and there's something about the chemical makeup of the Hoosier tires that makes them last longer. And you can really see the Hoosiers coming to the front. You mentioned Shepard. He's another one who's a Hoosier proponent.
You know, it was amazing to me that Neil Bonnet during the Daytona 500 used only 9 tires, essentially only 1 tire change, and I guess there was even some talk about him going the entire distance on the same set of tires.
I think he planned to do it, but he ran over something and cut a tire about midway through the race and had to change tires. But as far as the wear was concerned, yes, they were going to go all the way.
Dale Earnhardt, the defending champion of this race, and, of course, the defending Winston Cup champion. He started 22nd, and he talked with us about moving up toward the front.
There's a lot of things can happen, you know, with a lot of cars around you and in front of you, and the first part of the race is going to be the most toughest time for accidents and everything. Everybody's going to be wanting to go and get going, and you know, you're not sure what's going to happen. So I'll be watching it and being pretty careful, and hopefully we can dodge anything that comes up in front of us.
Well, he has been very careful, despite the fact that he's used just about every groove and every lane there is out there on the racetrack. Dale Earnhardt is currently running 5th. There is Bill Elliott and Alan Kulwicki, and those two continue to run 1st and 2nd as we're inside now the Brad T car. They're the top 5. We'll be back after these messages. Story is the same at Rockingham with Bill Elliott in the lead, Alan Kulwicki running in 2nd position. At 6 o'clock tonight here on ESPN, we'll continue our coverage of World Cup skiing, the Subaru Aspen Winter National. We've been watching that for the last couple of nights, and some really awesome falls a couple of nights ago, but we'll continue our coverage tonight at 6 o'clock here on ESPN, the Subaru Aspen Winter National.
Alan Kulwicki is doing a good job of keeping Elliott in sight. You wonder if he's just sort of riding there, biding his time, or does he have a little bit left? Elliott, of course, running about where he wants to on the racetrack, Gary.
Well, you know the Elliots are pretty cagey. They never really show their hand till late in the race. You can look at Dan there. He's not worried about anything. Alan Kulwicki, he's probably running pretty hard. Gets up to Elliott's back bumper. Elliott looks at him and steps on it a little bit. I think more or less Elliott's gauging his pace by who's behind him.
You know, you're absolutely right. Whenever you look at the Elliott crew, they just seem to be very calm, very collected, never nervous or excited about anything.
No, the Elliott family, I think they've grown that way down in southern Georgia. It's just unreal, you know, for a team to be together as long as they have brothers, relatives, fathers, and to be that successful in this professional type of racing. It's really a tribute to them.
Well, Bill, of course, was one of those who was pretty outspoken about the restrictor plate and how it perhaps gave the Fords a disadvantage. But this is his track and the place for him to prove himself. They're not running the restrictor plate. Short tracks, not necessarily his cup of tea as we saw last weekend at Rockingham, or rather at Richmond. But here today is a chance for Billy Elliott to show himself.
Yeah, well, you know, Bill Elliott he thinks about Rockingham. He thinks about the super speedways as every one of them is just another win for him for the record book, but he's got to have an awful bad. You know, second to Bill Elliott on a big track, he doesn't even want to even consider finishing second. He's like Dale Earnhardt in that respect. On the short tracks, it's the other way around. Elliott wants to win, but he doesn't seem to put out the effort as he does at the bigger tracks.
There's Alan Kulwicki, who continues to run in 2nd position. And he is being challenged by Rick Wilson and Neil Bonnet, who are sneaking up on him. There you can see the Rick Wilson car, the yellow number 4, sneaking breaking up and closing in on the number 7 car. And right there on the bottom of the racetrack, the Valvoline sponsor machine number 75 is driven by Neil Bonnet. So a real battle shaping up here for that second spot as the two guys on Hoosiers, or two of the guys on Hoosiers, Rick Wilson and Neil Bonnet, have caught second place.
Those tires are working for him. You can see Wilson gets a little loose as he comes off of the turn, but he gathers it back in very quickly, still able to keep that car low on the racetrack. And after they've run as many laps as they have on these tires, that's a tribute to the tires that they'll still work down low on the racetrack.
Here's the pass for second. Wilson has him at the line. They go into turn number 1. Slower traffic ahead of everybody. But Rick Wilson has grabbed second position, and look at Neil Bonnet working the low side of the racetrack. He's now challenging Alan Kulwicki for third spot down the backstretch. And Neil has to drop off just a little bit because of a slower car in front of him, and so at the moment he doesn't challenge Alan Kulwicki, but Rick Wilson is the one that is being very impressive here in the first 100 laps.
Well, that is something for Rick Wilson and Neil Bonnet to break away from Bill Earnhardt. He's about
Earnhardt is pitting. Earnhardt is pitting. 87 laps. Earnhardt's in the pits, down in the pit area.
Well, the Goodwrench Chevrolet comes in a little bit early to what we predicted would be a routine pit stop about lap 90 or 95. Actually, they wanted to be very careful. You know, Earnhardt started way back in the field at 22nd spot, so they're concerned he may have used his tires up early. They wanted to come in, get some fresh rubber on the car, and not risk anything here, but possibly losing a tire going in the wall early here at Rockingham.
Well, Jerry lost one lap during that pit stop, which is pretty hard to make a pit stop here and change tires and not lose a lap. So Earnhardt now should be able to run a little faster than he was running because of the new tires on the right side.
And look at Rick Wilson. He has caught Bill Elliott and may be challenging for the lead. Everybody in the grandstand is on his feet watching this battle as Neil Bonnet comes in for a stop.
And these will be routine pit stops coming up. Bonnet pulls in, they'll change right side tires, and Rick Wilson just blows right on past Bill Elliott.
Rick Wilson has come on from his 26th starting position to take the lead on lap number 89. Impressive indeed. And there is Neil Bonnet, who has already had the service performed on his car, and Bonnet rolls back out onto the race course.
And he too will go a lap down as the leaders go by, and he goes back out onto the racetrack.
That definitely is a little conservative to start pitting about 89. It's so critical here because you do lose a lap with two-tire pit stop.
And Sterling Marlin coming into the pits in the Piedmont Airlines Oldsmobile. We'll see most of them certainly within the next 10 laps will be making pit stops, including Alan Kulwicki in car number 7.
He ran second for many laps, but is now coming in, and Elliott is also in. Bill Elliott is pitted just ahead of Alan Kulwicki. Here's Dick Berggren.
Elliott's going to do about what everybody else is doing, and that is to take on right side tires. Right behind him, Kulwicki is doing the same thing. Up pit road, they're getting ready for Rusty Wallace to make his pit stop. They are adjusting the wedge on Elliott's car. The chassis not quite to his liking. Kulwicki gone. His chassis was loose. They adjusted it. And tire change.
The first scheduled series of pit stops are occurring in the Goodwrench 500 as Bill Elliott and Alan Kulwicki have both come in for service. Now here comes Ken Schrader, who is running in the top 5, and Rick Wilson is slowing down on the racetrack. And I think he is slowing not because he's coming in for a stop, but because he has a problem with that car. He's pitted on the backstretch.
And Rusty Wallace was coming awfully slow down pit road as well. Dale Jarrett follows him into the pit. Wallace acted like he might have been out of gas because he was very slow as he came off of turn 4, a little slower than they normally come.
There are the backstretch pits of Rick Wilson. And he is finished with his scheduled stop and begins to roll away now. Most of the top runners are pitted along the front stretch here. However, there are some like Bobby Allison and Rick Wilson, who is on the backstretch. The Quaker State crew prepares for a stop from Ricky Rudd, and there is the Jeff Bodine crew that's going to work changing right side rubber on that car.
This is where gas mileage really pays off. If one car could hold out here without pitting and a yellow come out, this is the most likely time for a yellow during the green flag pit stop. One guy could hold out and he could gain a lap on the field.
And I think Michael Waltrip just ran out of gas. He had made a very impressive run from near the back of the field as well. He's running the Hoosier tires, but I believe he ran out of gas as he came off of turn 4, and he was wobbling the car back and forth. He's pitting on the backstretch as well as we see the pit stop by Ricky Rudd in the Quaker State Buick. They too, like everyone else, changing the right side tires.
Let's keep our eye on that number 28 car. He seems to be the gas mileage king these days. Let's see what lap he pits in.
And of course, is the car being driven by Davey Allison. Ricky Rudd moves back out onto the racetrack. There is Dale Earnhardt, who was among the first to make his scheduled stop. And below him is the Morgan Shepherd car.
We might mention that Ricky Rudd came down pit road very slowly, as did Rusty Wallace. Now, both those drivers were out of gas. Rusty Wallace had his car run out of fuel coming off turn 2. He coasted down the backstretch, came in off turn 4, and was able to keep the car just sputtering a little bit while he put gas in it here in the pit stop. The same thing with Ricky Rudd in the Bernstein Buick. Rudd came down pit road, and the car was completely cut off. They had to push the car to get it started, but cost him some valuable time on his green flag pit stop.
That's going to give us an indication of exactly how far these cars can go on a full tank of fuel, because several were very close, if not completely out of gas when they came in for their first scheduled stop. The number 97 car of Morgan Shepherd is being shown in the lead because of the pit stops that we have had in the last few laps. Stay with us. We'll be back with more in a moment. Back at North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham for the Goodwrench 500, and Morgan Shepherd, who was leading for a lap or two, has made the pit stop, and that gives the lead back to Bill Elliott. Or does
maybe it doesn't. Several cars, including Terry Labonte and Harry Gant, had made pits. Of course, Gant had made a green flag pit stop, but Terry Labonte had pitted late or during that early caution and put him back in the back of the pack, so he's able to run a little farther as far as fuel is concerned. So it might be that Terry Labonte's leading this race.
Yeah, the way you figure it is, it takes about 32 seconds off of your lap time to make a green flag two-tire pit stop. And one circuit of the track is around 26 seconds. So if you stop and change two tires when you come out, you're going to be about 4 or 8 seconds behind where you were.
There were a couple of other drivers that made pit stops during that only caution flag that we have had when Richard Petty wrecked, including Lake Speed and Buddy Baker. They made pit stops along with Terry Labonte. They have not made green flag pit stops as yet, so they should be running at the head of the pack.
Well, in any case, Neil Bonnet is doing well as he has passed Bill Elliott. Lake Speed is the leader of the race, according to NASCAR scoring. Morris Metcalf and his group of people have indicated to us that Lake Speed, who did pit, as you indicated, Ned, when Richard Petty had the crash on lap number 19, so that gives him the lead, and Lake Speed came in for gasoline only on that stop, so it was a very short stop for him.
And of course, Terry Labonte, even though he took on tires that was during a caution period, and to Buddy Baker, they have yet to make a green flag pit stop. They'll have a green flag pit stop coming up before too long, but as a result of taking on fuel when they did make those stops, they're able to stay out there a little longer.
Well, Dale Earnhardt is right ahead now of the leader, Lake Speed.
And I believe that Earnhardt has just moved himself back into the lead lap as he passes Lake Speed. That would put him back in the lead lap, or either Lake Speed's about to put him a lap down, because he was pretty far ahead of Lake Speed before Earnhardt made his pit stop.
Morgan Shepherd is positioned right ahead of Dale Earnhardt on the racetrack. There he is. That's Brett Bodine in the 15 car.
This is one of the things the crew chief always tries to do, is get his car out front, a lap ahead of everybody on gas, and then just hope for a yellow flag, gives you a big advantage for your race to keep that lap on everybody.
Lake Speed got caught in heavy traffic there for a moment, but he very wisely backed out of it, get himself in the right position. Now he tries to move up on the outside of Brett Bodine in the Bud Ford number 15.
You know, while we didn't have a scoring mistake in the Richmond race, there was a little bit of questions by some of the crews. Now, is the Earnhardt crew at this moment concerned about where he is in the standings, knowing that the leader is right behind him, you think?
No, I don't think that, well, they certainly are concerned to some degree, but now that he's in front of the leader, of course, the best thing they can hope for would be a caution. And, of course, that's what Lake Speed's hoping for right now, too, because he has a pit stop coming up before too long. But as long as he can stay out in front of Lake Speed, well, yeah, they're not too concerned about it.
Yeah, that's right. The gas mileage is playing a factor already in the race if something happens. If there's no incidents in the next few laps, Lake Speed and Terry Labonte should make their pit stops, and everybody should be back even again.
Again, those early pit stops on lap 19, so theoretically, those guys should be stopping about 19 laps after the guys that just did pit.
Exactly, and here's Lake Speed now moving around Dale Earnhardt and putting him a lap down. And I'll tell you, that's amazing. Earnhardt has 2 new tires on the car. Of course, he's run, 10 or 15 laps since he made the pit stop. But Lake Speed has tires on that car that he has run almost 100 miles now. In fact, a little over 100 miles, still working well on the bottom of the racetrack.
Lake Speed is another one of those drivers on the Hoosier tires. We're at lap number 109 out of 492. The scoreboard is showing that the 83 car of Lake Speed is the leader. Now here is the Slender U sponsored machine of Brad Teague. They have the hood up on that car, and it appears as if it may be through for the afternoon, although Brad is still in the cockpit.
Tough break for him here early in the race. He wanted to have a good run, felt he could have a good run here today. It's down a little bit on horsepower, but nevertheless, they've been working hard on that car and getting to run better every race.
Now, Bobby Allison is coming in for a stop, and he was among those that pitted during the Richard Petty crash.
Well, Allison is in the pit. This is not exactly what they would like to do at this point. The car is a little bit loose. They think they may have a tire problem. They're pulling the fender away from the right front tire, and now Allison is gone.
The 500 winner, Bobby Allison, moves back on his feet as he rejoins the race.
And another of those cars that had pitted, Buddy Baker, also made a pit stop under the green. He goes back out on the racetrack. So only 2 of those that had made early pit stops are still on the racetrack, and they are Lake Speed, who's down on the inside of the racetrack. We see him there now, and Terry Labonte in car number 11.
I thought he was dropping to the inside of the racetrack there in turn 3, indicating he might possibly be coming in for a stop, but he does not. Lake Speed continues to circle this racetrack and be in the lead as he goes to the low side. Dale Jarrett in the Hardy-sponsored car and passes cleanly coming out of the 4th turn. We're glad you could join us on this Sunday afternoon for our first Winston Cup telecast of 1988. We're at Rockingham, North Carolina.
In communities across America, there's a working spirit. People working together with a feeling of pride.
Lake Speed continues to lead the Goodwrench 500 at North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham. Being shown in 2nd position is the number 88 car. 3rd is Terry Labonte. 4th is Neil Bonnet. And here comes Lake Speed in for the stop. Laps completed. Neil Bonnet has the lead. Rick Wilson is 2nd, and Bill Elliott, Morgan Shepherd, and Alan Kowicki. If we were a race car, we would have suffered a blown engine just a few minutes ago when we made a quick repair, and we're ready now to reset the scene here and tell you what's been going on. It's been all green since we had our power failure, and Neil Bonnet, as we said, is in the lead. For a summary of the pit stops, let's go to Pit Central and Larry Newberg.
Bob, Ned, and Gary, those pit stops around lap 90, 92 were very routine, as I know those of you up in the booth know. That's just about what all the crews would have expected to go. A little less than 100 miles or about 100 miles. But looking at the summary, you can see that the big loser in that pit stop sequence was Dale Earnhardt, who went in 5th position and came out 6 positions further back. Now, there are a couple of wild cards in this mix I'll address to in a couple of seconds. But Neil Bonnet pretty much held forth where he was. Alan Kowicki lost a little bit, and Bill Elliott also lost positions. But the primary reason those 3 lost positions were because of Lake Speed and Rick Wilson. Both on Hoosiers, by the way. Lake Speed had stopped much earlier so he could go further, but Rick Wilson really stretched that outer envelope with those Hoosier tires.
Crash.
And they really gave him an opportunity. We got a crash out of the Speedway. It looks like it's Rusty Wallace involved, yes.
Not sure who the other car that hit the wall is at the moment.
They went into that turn 3 wide. Darrell Waltrip and 2 others, and the guy on the inside looked like he couldn't control it.
Well, Rusty Wallace didn't suffer any major damage. He's staying out there. The caution comes out on lap number 141. The other car involved in the crash is stopped down at the entrance to the pit area.
Looks like it might be Charlie Baker's car. We'll confirm that a little later on. But, Bob, there are a lot of people that are happy to see this caution come out. Here's Bonnet coming into the pits. Darrell Walter comes down pit road. Darrell Walter had just been lapped by Neil Bonnet. And now let's go to Dick Bergman in the pits.
Well, Neil Bonnet's going to take this routine scheduled pit stop to take on 2 right side tires. The same thing he did the last time they had a pit stop. No, he's going to do a 4-tire change. They're going to change the left side tires as well. He's telling the windshield guy, hey, clean it right here. I want to be able to see out of this whole thing. And just a moment ago, he radioed to his crew and told them this thing is running perfectly. Indeed, Bonnet is on a wire today, running extremely well. Up and down pit road, everybody's doing the same thing. 4 tire changes for everybody, regardless of what brand they're using.
Alan Kulwicki moves out, but Bill Elliott is the one who wins the race out of the pit area. For everybody else, as you can see that Neil Bonnet has completed work on his car. Ken Schrader is still working on the left side of that Folgers-sponsored Chevrolet, and Ken Schrader now moves back out.
Boy, tough break for Darrell Walter. He just did lose that when caution came out. Neil Bonnet just got ahead of him, beat him to the line, and that was it.
And, of course, those that didn't make a pit stop the last time around have caught up to the caution car, and they'll be coming in led by Jeff Bodine.
And to reconfirm, the car that indeed was the other one involved in that accident up in turn number 3 was the Charlie Baker machine, number 93. And we have a replay of at least the end of this crash that we'll describe for you.
And you can see Darrell Waltrip's car right in front of them, and Charlie Baker spins going into the turn. There's Rusty Wallace down on the inside, and Rick Wilson, who was running in second place, barely gets by. There's Michael Waltrip in the car number 30 coming through. Some heads-up driving as Wallace stays low on the racetrack. He makes a complete 360 all the way around. So fortunately, they split as they spun. It gave room for the others to come through the middle.
How many times have we seen Rick Wilson in a similar situation and ultimately being involved in the crash? Perhaps this is an indication that things may be going right for him this year.
Could very well be, because, you know, it's amazing at how the monkey can get on your back every once in a while, and you're at the wrong place at the wrong time every time. And then all of a sudden it turns around for you, and maybe it has turned around for Rick Wilson.
Well, Rick Wilson definitely is having a good run so far today. He's up there on the leaderboard all day, running second at the moment. He looks like he's awful strong, along with the rest of Neil Bonnet, Bill Elliott. Rusty Wallace was awful strong until that spin. I don't know if that'll cause him any problems or not.
Now, Rusty had gone a lap down by Neil Bonnet, and Rusty had run out of gas and had to coast about halfway around the track, and that's what got him a lap down. And so now he's finding himself catching up again, but it didn't look like he did any damage to his car.
Dick Berggren is in the Elliott pit.
Well, Ernie, you were just making like a Goodyear engineer, looking all over your tires. What did you see in the tires?
Well, basically, we're just checking the tire to see how the wear is, to see how consistent the heat is across the tire. You know, we're a little bit concerned right now. You know, the Hoosiers are running good, but I think, you know, our chassis is off just a little bit. We've made some changes early this morning because of the overcast conditions. And what we're mainly looking at now is to make sure, you know, the adjustments we make to the car are the correct adjustments.
Will those adjustments cause you to not be able to run in one particular part of the racetrack? Are you stuck down low or up high?
No, not really. The car, once we get everything dialed in, should work basically anywhere. But, you know, like I say, we made the changes because of the overcast conditions. And when you make the changes, you're not sure exactly where you're at. So right now, we're just kind of feeling our way through.
Well, we'll find out in a few moments when the green flag comes on. Right now, Jerry Punch is up pit road with Barry Dodson. Jerry?
Well, Barry Dodson is the crew chief for Rusty Wallace and the Kodiak Pontiac, and they've already had a rough beginning. Barry, after running so well early on in the first few laps, you guys have had some problems. You ran out of fuel and lost a lap on that first pit stop, and now something up there. What happened up there in turn 3 and 4?
Well, it was our fault on the fuel. You know, you can't calculate how long they sit on pit road and warm the cars up. We were getting ready to come in, but it ran out. Anytime it happens on this size racetrack, it really hurts you. As far as what happened down here, he saw the wreck, got slowed down. Somebody behind him, you know, wasn't watching where they were going, I guess, and ran over him. Car's fine. We just need to get the lap back.
1 lap down, but still digging Rusty Wallace.
And the field is realigning for a restart here in the next couple of laps. You know, we've talked about the tire story now for quite a while, and indeed it is a big story in Winston Cup racing, and here is a quick fact. Quick Backs are brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Goodyear has been involved in Winston Cup racing for the past 30 years. Well, this year, for the first time, the Winston Cup competitors will have a choice. The new kid on the block, well, it's this Hoosier tire, made appropriately in Indiana. Now, this tire is about a ½ an inch shorter than the Goodyear tire. It's about an inch less in circumference. Therefore, for this tire to run the same speed, it would have to turn more times on the car. Therefore, an engine will turn higher RPMs with the Hoosier than with the Goodyear. So during a race, if a team says, well, we've been running Goodyears, but the Hoosiers are running better maybe now, and they switch to the Hoosiers, they're going to see more RPM. Therefore, they're going to turn the engine a little more during an event. The difference, yes, it is. The new guy, the Hoosier, the old standby, the Goodyear Eagle.
And of course, if they change brands of tires during the race, they have to change all 4 at one time. And Gary, that could make a difference in the gearing of the car.
Well, with the difference in the circumference of the tire, the engine will turn more RPMs with the Hoosier tire if you took off a Goodyear and put on a Hoosier. And that could be something that some of the teams may be thinking about for later in the race. But I got a feeling most of them will stay with the Goodyears for the duration. The ones that start on Goodyears, and Hoosiers for the ones that start on Hoosiers.
Caution flag is still out on North Carolina Motor Speedway as we are 145 laps into the Goodwrench 500. There are the top 5. The green has just come out here at Rockingham. Bill Elliott has set sail once again. And in second position on the racetrack is Alan Kulwicki, but there are a couple of cars between Elliott and Kulwicki, namely Darrell Waltrip and Rusty Wallace. Running third is Rick Wilson, fourth is Neil Bonnet, and in fifth position is Dale Earnhardt.
Elliott really got a jump on that start. He pulled ahead of Darrell. Darrell really wanted to get in front of Elliott and hope for another caution and try and hold Elliott back, but it didn't happen.
Once again, let's recap the most recent series in Mid-Central. Larry Newman.
About everybody only went about 20-25 laps since the last pit stop. It's obvious that everyone is searching a little bit, trying to find that right setup that Gary Nelson was referring to. Now you can see the big loser was Morgan Shepherd, but this actually kind of puts him back in line appropriately where he was running before the first set of pit stops. Everybody else, Elliott, Kulwicki, Wilson, and Neil Bonnet are pretty much falling in line where they were before the first yellow flag that we had, about 30-40 laps ago. Now, all those pit stops, of course, came under the yellow flag. Some interesting comments that we're picking up off the radio. Dale Earnhardt says, and his crew confers with this, that they are having tire wear problems, and he, from the cockpit, expressed concern that there were only 4 cars by their count in the middle of the pit stops in the lead lap that were on Goodyear tires. Yesterday, he made the same comment during the Busch Grand National race. Those tires are going to be really tough. Those expletive-deleted Hoosier tires are going to be very tough. Darrell Waltrip's crew is reporting that everyone on Goodyear tires, by their recollection and from what they've been able to gather, is having problems. Now, that's not to say they're having trouble. It's just that they're getting beat by the Hoosiers, at least at this stage of the race. But pretty much everything is status quo down here. A lot of the crews taking this one extra opportunity to make a pit stop here, probably a little sooner than they really wanted to come in for this particular set.
Well, let's run down for you the 12 cars that are in the lead lap. Bill Elliott, Rick Wilson, this is in no particular order, Alan Kulwicki, Neil Bonnet, Dale Earnhardt, Terry Labonte, Blake Speed as the race for second heats up now with Alan Kulwicki and Neil Bonnet running side by side. Blake Speed, Ken Schrader, Sterling Marlin, Davey Allison, Buddy Baker, and Morgan Shepherd are all in the lead lap. And now we have a new second place contender. That is Neil Bonnet, who has passed Alan Kulwicki.
Bonnet's car is really working today, and he is driving his heart out. That's the way he likes it, though. He likes to run as hard as that thing will possibly go.
There once again is Bill Elliott and those 2 lap cars that are between Elliott and second place Neil Bonnet. We talked earlier, guys, about the fact that sometimes when things happen that aren't to your liking or that are very much of a setback, it just gives you more determination to do that much better. And I think that's what we've seen from Neil Bonnet since his crash at Charlotte last year.
Boy, it's obvious Neil has the momentum coming off that win in Australia last Sunday. Now leading or being one of the most competitive cars here at this track, taking the lead for a long stretch. Also winning Richmond 2 weeks ago. That is something about momentum.
No one is more determined than Neil Bonnet. He is such a competitor. All of these fellows are competitors, certainly, but he just has such a competitive edge in everything he does, whether he's hunting with Dale Earnhardt or whether he's driving a race car against Dale Earnhardt. He wants to be first.
Jerry Punch has a report for us.
Well, Ricky Rudd has had a tough beginning here at Rockingham. Not only did he run out of fuel and lost a lap, but now he's having more problems. Apparently, he's got a mechanical problem. We're in the Quaker State pits, the Kenny Bernstein-owned car, and let's find out what's wrong with Ricky Rudd. Let's go over to crew chief Larry McReynolds so we can find out from Larry what the problem is. Larry, I understand you feel it's possibly having a mechanical problem. What's wrong?
Yeah, he was complaining about it wouldn't clear out on that restart a while ago. Now he says it's running on 7 cylinders. I don't know. Our chassis really wasn't with us like it should have been. By the watch, if he's still hitting on 7 cylinders, it may have helped our problem. Maybe, you know, hopefully we can run there all night.
We have a crash in turn number 1 between turns 1 and 2. That's the 67 Buddy Arrington car that's being driven by Rick Jeffrey. And I don't think he made hard contact with the wall, but he did get the thing sideways and slid down the banking, bringing out another caution.
This, of course, will be the third caution of the evening, or the afternoon, and here is the car number 67, the Stanley Nitz car. As you see him go into the turn, apparently the back end just got out from under him, and it went around, and boy, those cars behind with all that smoke, they were not able to see, but he kept it off the wall. You saw Mark Stahl in car number 82 make a good move down to the inside, and he was able to just go sideways and get her down the low side of the racetrack and bring it on around.
So no contact at all, it appears, as the car just got out from under Rick Jeffrey and slid toward the wall, but he got it stopped before it made actual contact. Now we have more pit stops being made. Not everybody is coming in, but several are, including Dale Earnhardt. Ricky Rudd is also in, so is Bobby Allison, and Jerry Punch is down there.
Dale Earnhardt comes in under this yellow flag. We mentioned Larry Newber said Earnhardt maybe see a little bit of tire temperature. The tires are heating up a little bit because he's running up awfully high, trying to keep them down. And we heard Richard Childress tell us up high is the place where you can wear less of tires, and obviously you get a little better asphalt. Foreign tire change for the Goodwrench Chevrolet. Dale Earnhardt down and away. Other cars in the pits having their trouble. We mentioned Ricky Rudd is in pit road, and Rudd, of course, with the hood up, still having his problems in the Quaker State Buick.
Jeff Bodine in for a pit stop. Darrell Waltrip was in, and he's back out there again. So is Harry Gant. So not a lot of pit stops made, but those, again, that were experiencing wrong, a bad set of tires or whatever, were able to come in and make the corrections.
As I look down pit road, just about every car that was changing the tires, they changed 4, were making chassis adjustments. There was a man in the window. There was people turning the jack bolts. The tire stagger obviously was being changed. So it was quite a round of adjustments for everybody. They're still searching.
The signal is being given for one more lap. We'll go back to green flag race.
This caution period caused by a Rick Jeffrey sprint up in turn number 1. Bill Elliott will maintain the lead here as we go back to green. Neil Bonnet is in second, followed by Alan Kowicki, then Rick Wilson, and the 5th place car is Morgan Shepherd. 3 of the 5 on Hoosier tires.
Rusty Wallace down on the inside of Bill Elliott. He would like nothing better to get the jump on Elliott on the restart, get back in the lead lap, and then hope for a caution flag so that he can come all the way around.
Then Goodwrench has something for us in the pits.
Bob, you know, the guys who are running well all stayed out there. Elliott, Bonnet, Kowicki, Rick Wilson, they all stayed on the racetrack, but down here, every single team considered it. They all looked at the sheets, made the decision. They're going to go with what they have, and they're going to go with it very shortly, because here comes the green flag.
Harold Kinder waves it on lap number 162, and we go back to competition. Now, Gary, we talked earlier during our power failure about how sometimes you recommend to a driver to get the jump and block another driver so you can't get that lap back. And there Rusty Wallace goes to the inside of Bill, not getting it back yet, but sometimes you give a driver some strategy as to how they might get the jump and get that lap back on a restart.
Well, that's right. As you see, Rusty Wallace did get his lap back here if he can hold it. Darrell Waltrip had a great pit stop on the caution before this last one. His team put him out in front of everybody. He had just gone a lap down, so he had a good stop. On the restart, he was the front man. He was technically not a lap down. He could have restarted on the outer groove and maybe blocked Bill Elliott. So a minor mistake on the 17 crew's part, because they could have held Elliott back possibly.
So Rusty Wallace now hoping for a caution flag at this period, because he knows it's going to be tough to keep Bill Elliott back there, and he also knows that Neil Bonnet is coming back there in second place. He might be the toughest one to keep him from going another lap down.
So Neil Bonnet is closing in on the leader, Bill Elliott. And back and further is a battle for third between Kowicki and Kyle Petty.
Every Ferrari 328 and every Ferrari Testarossa that comes to America comes on Goodyear Eagles. And only on Goodyear Eagles. Why? Because Mr. Ferrari wants it that way. Goodyear Eagles, Ferrari's choice as America's best tires.
Man has always been fascinated with speed. But winning is more than a quest for speed. It's a measure of skill, a test of guts. And though NASCAR has changed through the decades, its spirit never will. It's not just the machine, it's the man who drives it. We're proud to be a part of this great sport. Busch, the official beer of NASCAR.
Of all the cars that come out each year, only one can be the Motor Trend Car of the Year. For 1988, that one is this one. The hot new Pontiac Grand Prix. Get on your Pontiac and ride! Pontiac ride! The new Grand Prix, Motor Trend's Car of the Year. You've got to drive it. Get on your Pontiac! We feel excitement!
Users of nasal sprays invariably encounter the same problem.
Morning, boys.
Sprays that roll out of their nose or drip back into their throat. To avoid this, they'll do just about anything. But now there's new Sinex Ultrafine Mist. Its medicine doesn't roll out or drip back. It goes up and stays up, and that makes it better. So try new Sinex Ultrafine Mist. It goes up and stays up. From Vicks, of course.
How to write a small business success story. Listen to how AT&T comes through to help turn small businesses into bigger ones and learn to write your own success story.
Who says a little shrimp can't be big business? AT&T showed us how telemarketing can pull in customers from coast to coast.
Aye, AT&T explained how an 800 number in catalogs makes it easier for customers to reach me. Now, my bunny business is booming.
AT&T helped me turn my one-man shop into a 75-man operation. Now I'm wheeling and dealing cross-country.
Call 1-800-426-1513 now for your free booklets and learn how AT&T can help you manage field sales, improve customer service, expand markets, and ease cash flow with telecommunications ideas to grow on.
Why not let AT&T help put you on the high road, too?
AT&T, the right choice.
Bob Jenkins, Ned Jarrett, Gary Nelson, Larry Newber, Dick Berggren, and Jerry Punch back at Rockingham, North Carolina Motor Speedway in the Goodwrench 500. Neil Bonnet is the new leader of this race. Rusty Wallace staved off the challenge of both Bill Elliott and Neil Bonnet for a while, but Rusty lost the lap once again. So it's Bonnet leading, followed by Bill Elliott. Third is Rick Wilson, who's continuing to move up. Fourth place belongs to Alan Kowicki, and fifth is Morgan Shepherd as Kowicki goes into the corner side by side with Rusty Wallace. As Morgan Shepherd watches all this ahead of him. There he is. There is the number 5 car, the 97, driven by Morgan Shepherd. Let's go to Larry in Pit Central.
We want to thank the Hardys and the Oldsmobile people providing this cutaway car to us. It will give us an opportunity to show you some pieces of the race car that normally you don't have an opportunity to see. Pit stop ago, Gary Nelson was talking about adjusting the wedge. Now, what that refers to is a redistribution of the weight on the corners of the car. You can't change the weight. It doesn't slide the weight around, but it kind of redirects it. And any effect of changing of the weight redirection on one corner has the same effect on the other corner. Now, here is one of the wedge bolts in the rear that we're talking about. that wedge butt actually applies its pressure right down on the rear springs of the race car and changes that weight distribution that we were talking about. And again, the important thing to keep in mind is that they're not sliding any pieces around. There's no moving metal pieces here. It's just an opportunity to redirect the primary force of gravity and the inertia, how it plays against each other on the race car. And you can do this a lot during the race. A crank of 2 or 3 turns is not all that uncommon here at Rockingham. If you see a team making a crank of maybe 1 turn or 1.5 turns, they're in pretty good shape. But they have to continuously do this throughout the race because the track changes. It may get hotter, it may get cooler, more oil will be laid down on the racetrack. It's a necessary evil. And the teams that do this the best, and by the way, Gary Nelson is pretty darn good at this, they're going to be successful.
Well, sometimes, Larry, it works, sometimes it doesn't. You just kind of search your way through these kind of races. They're so long, you know, we're not even to 200 laps yet, and you can see everybody making adjustments. They're going to continue that pretty much through the race. Minor adjustments, hopefully. If you get into the major adjustments where you're really changing your tire sizes or you're changing your wedge a lot, then you're probably going to be in trouble. But all the lead pack cars are going to be making adjustments all day long.
All right, back in the pack, we have Lake Speed, who has moved up to 6th. Sterling Marlin is 7th. And the number 11 car is in 8th position. That, of course, is Terry Labonte. Going back to this weight jacking situation, we'll go to Talladega in the early part of May, and then they will have the right side sealed up with windows, a new regulation last year from NASCAR. What problems did that present for you guys when they did that you couldn't get into the open window?
Well, at first it was a major problem, and then the drivers and the crew members got together and went to NASCAR and asked them if they would allow us to cut a small hole in the rear window or the roof just above that jack bolt that Larry was pointing to. And so on those super speedway tracks where you do run that right side window, the crewman is able to take a long extension and put it on the end of his ratchet and reach down in there and adjust the wedge without even actually getting in the car.
4th, 5th, and 6th here. Alan Kulwicki, Morgan Shepherd, Lake Speed, and Sterling Marlin also joining the fight.
Good battle there between those 4 automobiles. Morgan Shepherd now trying to hold off Lake Speed down on the inside, but Speed's car has been working so well on the low side of the racetrack. Lake has had some of the best runs of his career here at the North Carolina Motor Speedway when he was driving for someone else. He owns his own team now and has the sponsorship of Kmart and Wins, and picked up Delco as a sponsor this year, which helped him to run all of the races. The first commitment that he's made to run all of the races since he built his own team a couple of years ago.
We haven't talked about Morgan Shepherd a whole lot in that number 97 car, but don't forget he was one of those who started way back in the back of the field. It's a 35th when the green flag dropped on the field, and really has been running in the top 5 for quite a few laps. And right now, he is shown in the 4th to 6th position.
This car is owned by Tom Winkle of Ohio, and Goodwrench here for 2nd place as the car number 4, Rick Wilson, goes on the inside of Bill Elliott.
For a long time there, Bill Elliott was running between the 2 Hoosier cars. Bill Elliott being a Goodyear car, Neil Bonnet and Rick Wilson both on Hoosiers. And so it looked like a pretty good battle, but it looks like Rick Wilson has a little more coming off the turns. He can run just a little lower than Bill Elliott.
Wilson in that lower groove as they go into turn number 1. Elliott slides a little bit high, and Wilson is able to pass him going out of corner number 2. Let's see what Bill can do down the backstretch.
Well, he was running high and had the momentum. His RPMs were a little higher in his engine, so that let him come right on up past him on the straightaway. But when you get to the turn, it's a different story.
Right, that momentum really shows up towards the end of the straightaway. The 9 car will have a little bit more speed because of the outer groove that he's running. He's not having to slow down as much in the turn.
Rick Wilson into 2nd. And this time, as they go down the backstretch, Wilson is able to cleanly pass completely and then pull up in front of Elliott. So Rick Wilson is now in 2nd and Bill Elliott back to 3rd.
The Rick Jeffrey car down on the inside that spun out earlier, but he's still out there in the rain.
For those of you who have heard us talk about Hoosier tires throughout the broadcast, and you're wondering why you can't go to your local tire dealer and buy some Hoosiers, it's because they don't make passenger tires. They are strictly a racing tire company, and they're celebrating their 25th year of existence this year.
Well, it's the first year for Hoosiers in the Winston Cup, and they're doing a heck of a job with the win at Richmond and now the performance they're showing so far today. We're still kind of watching to see if they develop problems later in the race. The Hoosier tires being so new to Winston Cup racing, maybe what makes them faster now could possibly be a problem later if the tires start giving up.
We'd like to apologize because we're still having some problems here at the racetrack, that we're taking power hits, and you may notice a loss of audio momentarily and perhaps a loss of video also. We're trying desperately to get everything fixed and back to 100% normal. Please bear with us until we can get that accomplished.
They probably have one of the largest crowds that has ever been here at the North Carolina Motor Speedway. And, of course, there's a tremendous drain on the power. The more people you have and to serve, the more drain there is on the power. And, of course, we got to have some of that to make all of this work.
And I think most of the people are going to concession stands to buy hot coffee this afternoon because it's pretty cool here, and we haven't seen the sun hardly at all since we arrived on Friday. Back with more in a moment.
We now expect to arrive at Kennedy Airport around 6:40 a.m.
I see you've got homework, too.
You think when you get to this point, things would get easier?
Yeah, I know. It looks like that was quite a project.
Have a look. No trade secrets here.
Thanks. I wish we could do work like this, but we have to crank it out every week.
So do we.
Well, we can't afford to farm hours out. We have to do them on a computer.
So do we.
You did that on a computer?
Of course. If we farmed them out, I couldn't afford to ride up here.
Advanced Management Systems, West Michigan's largest and best Apple dealers with 4 locations. Henry Street in Muskegon, 28th Street in Grand Rapids, South Washington in Holland, and West Grand River in Okemos. AMS, your authorized Apple dealer.
I'm telling you something, you yellow-bellied rat.
Stop! What he's trying to tell you is the legends of world-class championship wrestling are back. Weekday afternoons at 4 Eastern on ESPN. Don't miss it.
Because you're no good, son.
The Goodwrench 500 Winston Cup race from North Carolina Motor Speedway live this afternoon on ESPN. Neil Bonnet is the leader of this race. Rick Wilson is running second. There they are. Third place belongs to Bill Elliott. Fourth is Sterling Marlin, who has moved up to pass Lake Speed. And so Lake goes back to that 5th position. Let's see, behind Lake is going to be Morgan Shepherd, then Alan Kowicki, Terry Labonte, and Dale Earnhardt.
It seems to be quite a fast race considering what normally happens here at Rockingham. They're going into quite a long stretch here again.
Yeah, we haven't seen all that many caution periods. We've had 3 periods for a total of 17 laps, and that's really quite a surprise for this racetrack. Now, there is Buddy Baker, who is running with Terry Labonte on the racetrack.
Buddy, of course, one of the drivers who has run the Hoosier tires and working very well at this point.
Yeah, he's challenging Kowicki now. Those two are running side by side, and I believe that Buddy's on the lead lap, is he not? So this would be a battle for position.
Yeah, we're expecting to see that number 11 car. He's pitted last on lap 159. A little more gas than the rest of them.
This is a battle for 7th. If Buddy is on the lead lap, we'll recheck in the scoring. Yes, he is in the lead lap, so he just moved into 7th position. And Kowicki's car drifting high on the racetrack. Looks like Terry Labonte may be in a position also to challenge Alan Kowicki soon. But meanwhile, Labonte has his hands full with the guy who's running the rim this afternoon, Dale Earnhardt.
Boy, he just always comes into the picture, doesn't he? Anytime you're up near the leaders.
Yeah, you never want to forget about Dale Earnhardt. And it's the same way with Darrell Waltrip a lot of times. You'll see him just kind of lay back, but then when we come to the last 100 laps of the race, he's right there. You think Earnhardt is running up there intentionally?
Oh, yeah. His crew chief and car owner, Richard Childress, talked about how they set the car up intentionally to run up high. And right now, he's still on the same straightaway with the leader. So he's doing a good job when you consider Neil Bonnet looks like he's running away. He's really not that far ahead.
And again, when he's running that high, he's driving the car up there. He's not sliding up there, so he's not wearing the tires or heating them up as much as some of those that are trying to run low and they go into turn and drift up high. That's where you really spread the rubber off and also build the heat up in the tires.
Yeah, old Dale Earnhardt, he just went around Terry Labonte. Now he's gaining on Alan Kowicki and Buddy Baker. Let's see what happens in the next few laps.
Well, the car doesn't have an opportunity to drift up there. As you said, Ned, you got to drive it up there. There's no room to slide or you're going to be into the wall. Back up front, meanwhile, it is still Neil Bonnet and Rick Wilson. Neil Bonnet still feeling the effects of the crash that he suffered in Charlotte last year, and we asked him that if the good performances he's been experiencing is good medicine for him.
Then I broke my wrist. You're aware of at Martinsville, Virginia, on the 40th lap. I completely broke my wrist, my hand loose from my arm. I had both bones of my wrist broken, and I knew when it happened. And I called them on the radio and said, "You got to get a relief driver." And there was nobody out of the race in 40 laps in the race. Well, it's, you know, I got to going. The car got to running pretty good, and I finished 4th. And my arm never bothered me the rest of the day. And I cut the motor off and stepped out of the car, and it blew up like a balloon. And I was sitting there, and boy, I was moaning, crying the blues, and had to rush me to the hospital. And I never understood. I broke it on the 40th lap. I run 460 laps and ran 4th, and it never hurt till I got out of the car. So that's a perfect indication. I think you get so involved with the adrenaline flowing, the competitiveness of the race that you totally forget. I know if I can live with a broken wrist, this leg's not bothering me now.
That's exactly his reaction when the checkered flag dropped after Richmond. He was asked if the leg bothered him. He said, "I haven't even thought about it all afternoon until the race was over." Dick Berggren is with Bob Rahilly, who perhaps can tell us if Neil has made any radio communication about how he's feeling. Dick?
Well, they've been talking back and forth all afternoon, Bob. Bob, what is Neil telling you about the performance of the car?
Car's real good now. We're a little loose on this set of tires. We're waiting for the next caution to come up and put on 4 tires. We're a little looser than we were in the early part of the race. He can live with it right now.
How is he feeling physically?
Physically, he's in good shape. The sun is overcast today. It's cool inside the car, and he's doing fine. Just a long race and a lot of tension on you when you leave the race.
Bob Rahilly ought to know he's not only the car owner, he goes over the wall and changes tires. He's the motor builder, and even this morning I saw him with a broom cleaning out the garage. These guys do everything on this team.
But I'll tell you, they have got their act together this year because that team has looked good in every Winston Cup race that has been run so far in 1988. They were 4th at the Daytona 500, and of course they won Richmond, and they went to Australia last week, and they won that one too. We'll be back with more live coverage in a moment. At Rockingham, where Neil Bonnet and Rick Wilson are hooked up in a duel. Doesn't appear as if Rick can make the pass on Neil Bonnet, but boy, he's hanging right in there on the back bumper.
He has tried it high and low, Bob, but just has not been able to make the pass. Bob Rahilly said Bonnet's car was a little bit loose, but he's driving it very well, able to keep it low on the racetrack, working traffic very well, and so that means that the car is not too bad off, and Wilson just hasn't been able to do anything with it.
And Dick Berggren is in, Jerry Punch is in the Wilson pit.
Well, Rick Wilson, I don't know whether you believe it or not, but Rick Wilson had never seen this racetrack until about 4 days ago. This is his first ever race here, and I'm standing with his crew chief, Tony Glover, the crew chief of the Kodak Oldsmobile. And Tony, you guys are going to be awfully pleased. You really have the car dialed in well.
Well, right now, everything's going okay. Rick's doing a good job in the Kodak Steel Oldsmobile. The tires are really working right now, but I tell you, Neil Bonnet and Sterling Martin looking awful strong. They're going to be hard to beat.
Do you think Rick has something left he can maybe handle Neil out there?
Well, right now, he told me last time, he said he was just going to ride behind Neil and not punish the car. And, you know, it's an awful long race, so we're just going to sit there and ride around a while.
One disadvantage they may have here in these Kodak pits is that they are pitting on the back stretch. Everyone else is pitting on the front straightaway. By virtue of their poor qualifying effort, they're going to have to pit over here, and it may cost them possibly a lot of valuable time, even the race this afternoon.
Well, it's been 7 years since Rick Wilson visited here at North Carolina Motor Speedway, and his only other race here, which was on March 1st of 1981, the Carolina 500, he qualified 27th and finished 35th, not finishing the race because of brake failure. But boy, he is looking good this afternoon, running second to Neil Bonnet. And there's Dale Earnhardt still up there against the wall, moving alongside Terry Labonte.
Boy, Earnhardt just looks comfortable up there, but you know he's driving the heck out of that car.
Labonte staying low on the racetrack. So they've been battling for position there for quite a while. Earnhardt still maintaining the advantage. And Bob, while they're running at a fairly consistent pace here, let's take this time to say hello to a couple of fellows who would have been here this weekend had it not been for accidents in Daytona. J.D. McDuffie, who is undergoing some skin grafting in the Halifax Medical Center in Daytona, and also Bobby Wallach, who was injured in one of the 125-mile qualifying races. Fellas, we miss you and want to see you back here as quickly as possible. And an old friend of auto racing, and certainly one of my biggest competitors when I was racing, Darrell Derringer in Charlotte, North Carolina. Darrell, unfortunately, has cancer and is battling that right now. We wish him the best. And let's say hello to Lloyd Punch, the dad of Jerry Punch, who underwent triple bypass heart surgery this week. Our prayers and best wishes to him.
And that's for sure. And also our hats off to Jerry, who's doing the job as normal down in the pit area, despite the fact I'm sure that he has a lot on his mind thinking about his dad. And as Ned said, we certainly hope for the recovery of all of the people just mentioned.
And that battle continues between Terry Labonte and Dale Earnhardt. Labonte down on the inside of the track. We said at the top of the show that we would see a lot of this going on today, which would make exciting racing for the fans, as some drivers choose to run the low side, some the high side. Earnhardt, as we've documented very well, is one of those that has chosen to run the high side. Now Terry Labonte looks like he wants to move up there.
I think we're approaching the middle stages of the race. This is where it's tough for the drivers to maintain their concentration. Remember what groove to run and how hard to run and keep the speed up. The crew chiefs going through the same thing, trying to plot their strategy to hopefully get an edge on the next guy and figure out the gas mileage. You know, we've got two different sets of mileage figures out there. We've got some teams that have about an 18-lap advantage on some of the other teams on the fuel. So we're going to have to watch the 3 and the 11 are the two of the leader cars that have the best advantage on the fuel right now.
Now here we see another Hoosier Goodyear battle. That's Sterling Marlin in 44, who's on Hoosiers, who has moved up alongside Bill Elliott, challenging for the third position. Elliott at the moment, though, able to hold him off. This is Ford against Oldsmobile. Now as they come off corner number 4, Marlin has him. Let's see how they shake out as they go into the corner. Yep, Marlin has third.
Well, Ernie Elliott talked about how Bill's car was starting to get loose. It looks like it's getting worse on him. He can't hold a low groove and doesn't look near as steady as it did early in the race.
Rick Jeffrey car on the low side of the racetrack. Rick brought out our third caution of the afternoon when he spun at the turn number 3, but he's back out there in competition.
That car, the Piedmont Airlines car, has won here at the North Carolina Motor Speedway when Terry Labonte drove that car a few years ago. Had a very good win here, and the car always runs well here. So does Sterling Marlin.
The way you can tell if a driver intentionally is running high is he approaches a turn almost on the outside, where a driver that wants to run low, he'll approach aiming towards that low groove, and then if his car's not sticking, it'll slide high.
Push out, yeah. Marlin, by the way, goes into this race 4th in the point standings after 2 very good races.
Neil Bonnet and Rick Wilson just putting Jeff Bodine down another lap in the car number 5. Harry Gant on the high side of the racetrack. Harry had made an unscheduled green flag pit stop early in the race, so they're putting him another lap down now as well.
Rick Wilson continues to follow Neil Bonnet, who is leading the Goodwrench 500 here at North Carolina Motor Speedway. Wilson about 7 or 8, maybe even 10 car lengths behind now, as we have completed 218 out of 492 laps. We'll be right back.
If you were gonna cook up some burgers tonight, you'd want to broil them on a grill.
Average speed of the Goodwrench 500 here at Rockingham, North Carolina, 119.901. That is with 3 caution periods for a total of 17 laps, and there have been 8 lead changes among 5 drivers. Currently, the lead is being held by the Valvoline Pontiac, driven by Neil Bonnet, and Rick Wilson, who's been chasing Neil for several laps now, continues to run in second. Well, Neil Bonnet, of course, battling back from a near career-threatening injury suffered at Charlotte Motor Speedway late last year. Bonnet was having a respectable season in 1987 with 15 top 10 finishes in 25 races. But at Charlotte, a crash which didn't appear to be serious, but it resulted in a badly broken right leg, an injury that threatened to end Neil's 14-year career. X-rays showed that metal was inserted into the leg to help healing. Last November, Neil discussed his future with Jerry Punch.
Do I need to do it anymore? And Jerry, I laid there and I thought about it, and I said, you know, I can do some more fishing, I can do some more hunting. But there ain't one thing I like better than fishing and hunting, and that's racing. And the day's gonna come when I say it ain't worth it. I mean, it just ain't worth it. But you're sitting there talking to somebody that might win a Daytona 500. If I can get well, I might win the Daytona 500. And then, you know, all the bad stuff that happened just was something, a step, just a blockage in the way of me getting to Daytona and win the 500, because that's what I got in mind. If I don't win the Daytona 500, I might go to Richmond and win Richmond. But if I don't win Richmond, I might slip up there to Rockingham and win it.
Well, Neil did return. In January, he was behind the wheel of his new Pontiac, ready to challenge Daytona International Speedway. The status of his leg injury?
If I re-break the leg right now, he says I'll break it below the plate. The plate is so large in my leg that if I do have an injury, it's going to be below the existing plate. I would be concerned about the upper part. You know yourself, it's not completely healed yet. It's not all the bony area is not filled in like it needs to be, but he told me I'd have to jump off my house to re-break it. So I'm not worried about jumping off house. I just want to stay off this wall down here. But the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is I work so hard to come back that I want to make it worthwhile. I want to try to get in here and win this race and be competitive and do what I've always wanted to do, try to win Daytona.
During that Daytona test session, everything appeared to be okay. In fact, Neil said he was feeling fine, but later admitted that he wasn't.
Well, I kind of told a few white lies all along the way that when I got to Daytona to do the testing, I said, well, I'm ready. Well, I wasn't ready. I physically wasn't ready. I was about 4 or 5 months ahead of when I was supposed to be out doing anything, and I just had some good doctors working on me and had the right kind of work done on my leg that I got to Daytona. I knew it was going to be tough. I was concerned after the test session if I could go the 500 miles at Daytona, but I got down there and the car ran so good. I think the performance of the car kind of nullified how bad my leg hurt and if it was giving me any problem. And my leg didn't affect the performance of the car. The thing ran good all day long, and just every week I can see it getting better all along. If I can make it another month without having a wreck and re-injuring it, I'll be okay.
The spirit, determination, and driving skill of Neil Bonnet was back for Daytona. He raced with his hunting partner, Dale Earnhardt, in the middle stages of the 500. And he went on to a 4th place finish. The next week at Richmond, despite near disaster trying to avoid Morgan Shepherd, who had cut a tire, Bonnet won his 17th Winston Cup race. We caught up with Neil earlier this week here in Rockingham, discussed the future in auto racing.
Well, the only thing I can guarantee is total dedication. When I got hurt at the level I did and almost had racing taken away from me without my own, you know, without me wanting to quit, and somebody just saying, hey, you're going to have to get out of it. Well, I felt like after I laid there week after week after week, lifting those weights and working hard to come back, I said, well, if I get back, I'm really going to apply myself. Right now, I'm applying myself as a race car driver more than I ever have. I've always ran hard, but I'm trying to run hard and run smart right now. I'm trying to get, I might not be here next year. I might have to quit next year for some reason, but while I'm here, I'm going to be running the wheels off the race car, and I've just kind of rededicated myself to the effort I want to put out, and I don't know if that's why I'm running better or the car's better, whatever, but when I'm out there, I'm going to be digging now.
Well, I don't think we can determine either why he's running so well in 1988, but he is Neil Bonnet with unquestionably one of the most impressive comebacks that I've seen in Winston Cup racing in many, many years. We'll take another break and be back with more live coverage at Rockingham. Back at the Goodwrench 500, Winston Cup race from Rockingham, North Carolina. And we've had a series of pit stops while we were away. Neil Bonnet gave up the lead, came in for the stop, dropped low out of corner number 4, and brought the Valvoline Pontiac in for some service.
Oh, this is when he came in.
Yeah, this is
early
the replay.
Into the pits. Of course, it was a planned pit stop as far as they were concerned.
And you notice they went to work on the left side of the car this time, changing the tires over there.
They seem to have a little problem under the left front. Either they were adjusting the left front wedge bolt or they had a problem with the tire. It's hard to tell from this angle, but definitely a longer pit stop than they wanted.
And that gave the lead to Sterling Marlin in car number 44 because Rick Wilson also came in for a stop. As a matter of fact, he's been in twice now in the last few laps, and Marlin has not made a pit stop. But he should be coming in very shortly. As a matter of fact, he's coming in right now, and here's Jerry Punch to call the stop.
30-year-old Sterling Marlin will bring the Piedmont Airlines Underalls Oldsmobile down pit road. He has radioed in and told Jake Elder, Jake, the car is just running super. They're going to come in and they will change left side tires. Apparently the Hoosier tires are getting the job done. Tires roll away now. They put the fresh Hoosiers on the car number 44 of Sterling Marlin. Clean the windshield. The crew now working. Jake Elder now makes a chassis adjustment through the right rear of the car. Add a little bit of might in the car, and Marlin down in the lane is 15 and 4/10 seconds. Good pit stop.
Marlin rolls back out onto the racetrack, and that, I believe, gives the lead to Dale Earnhardt.
Now, Earnhardt, of course, has yet to make a green flag pit stop, but as Gary pointed out, he has been getting some good gas mileage on that Chevrolet here this afternoon, so he'll run it as far as he possibly can before he brings it in.
Well, Dale Earnhardt in the 3-car, Terry Labonte in the 11, and Darrell Waltrip in the 17 are 3 cars that made a later pit stop than anybody else. They had about 18 laps more fuel. During these green flag pit stops like this right now is the most likely time for a caution. So they're sitting in a pretty good spot. Darrell to get his lap back, and the 3 and 11 car to be up front when the caution comes out, if it does.
And certainly this would be an opportune time for those that have not made the green flag pit stop for a caution to come out. So they're hoping. Here's Davey Allison in car number 28 coming down pit road. He was running in the 3rd position. Kyle Petty follows him down pit road in the Wood Brothers Ford.
You can bet Darrell Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt are going to stretch their gas, especially Darrell Waltrip, because he's got a lap to try and get back. So as far as he goes now is as far as he can go.
They're having trouble there on the right rear, aren't they, Gary?
It sure looks like it. He's under there. The brake locked when he came in. I don't know if there was a problem with the brake or not. Let's take a look.
Kyle Petty came in behind him. He already has his service and is back out. So, yes, that's an extended pit stop, no question about it.
And he finally gets going, though.
Hard to say what it is.
All right, so Earnhardt leads and Labonte is second. Now Ken Schrader moves up to 3rd, Morgan Shepherd 4th, and Neil Bonnet is in 5th. Larry?
You all have been commenting about Darrell Waltrip and how the day is not unfolding exactly the way he wanted. Well, we picked up a radio transmission from Jeff Hammond, his crew chief, to Darrell, said, now, I'm not giving up. I just want you to know that, but we apologize. We're taking a beating today, but I guarantee you, Darrell, stay with it because we'll be back.
Derry Cope running here with Terry Labonte, who is in 2nd position.
Derek here all the way from the state of Washington, having a good run today.
Yeah, he really is. He started back in the 36th position, but has been having a very steady ride.
Earnhardt now down on the low side of the racetrack for a change. Does that mean he's coming into the pits?
He is.
Or just changing?
Yes.
Yep, coming into the pits.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt, so he's going to relinquish the lead. Let's see how things go for the Richard Childress crew as Earnhardt brings the Chevrolet in, stops right on the mark, and the crew goes to work.
It's interesting. All the Hoosier cars have been changing left sides, and all the Goodyear cars are changing right.
That's right. Looks like this one is going rather smoothly. Gas being put in the car on the left rear. The tires have already been changed on the right side. They're checking left side rubber, but apparently they're content to send them out without a change there, and Earnhardt is back in competition.
They had a real fast tire change, but they were a little slow on the gas. That cost them a little bit, but not much.
And here is Terry Labonte coming in for a stop, and the Junior Johnson crew goes to work on that machine.
Same thing, right sides for the Goodyear car.
And the man reaches inside to make a chassis adjustment on the car.
Yeah, you can see that he's somewhat of a contortionist there, isn't he?
Sure is. Good pit stop there.
You can see that man just when he got out of the car, touch his headset. That means there's a button there to talk to the driver. He's saying, I got your wedge and I got it all set.
So there's Terry Labonte working back up to speed as he relinquishes a top 5 position. Morgan Shepherd hasn't pitted, so I think he's going to be our leader at the moment. Checking with NASCAR on exactly who has the lead now as pit stops are being taken.
You can bet Darrell Waltrip has his fingers crossed right now. He's hoping for a caution to get that lap back. That's his only hope at the moment.
Now NASCAR is telling us that Neil Bonnet is back in the lead. So Neil Bonnet apparently is back in the lead here. Morgan Shepherd is being shown as a lap down. We are just past the halfway point. 248 laps have been completed. The halfway mark is 246. There's the Davey Allison machine that had the problem on the right rear the last pit stop. Let's go to the pits for a report on what exactly the problem was.
We're with Tony Price, a crew chief for Davey Allison. And Tony, you guys had a problem with that last pit stop, something with the right rear. What happened?
No, we had a rubber in the right rear spring that increases the spring rate slightly, and the car was a little loose off the turn, so we decided to take the rubber out on the last stop to try and make it tighter off the turn. Now we think that may have been a bad decision. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, possible problems. It wasn't a tire changing problem. They were just making a chassis adjustment. Tony Price here in the Haviland pit.
Well, that made no sense to me at all, Gary Nelson. What did he say and what did he mean?
But what they have is a rubber cushion that goes between two coils of the rear coil spring. What that really does is make the spring stiffer when that rubber is in place. It's unusual to run one in the rear spring. That's the first time I've ever seen one run in the rear. But old Tony Price, the guy you heard on that they were interviewing there, he is the chassis man on that car. He does a good job. He's a New Zealand native, and he's a little hard to understand, but I think we'll have to watch and see how that 28 car runs from here.
Well, he was saying that it might have been a bad decision. We are seeing Harry Gant try to pass Davey Allison on the inside. That car is not working the way it was here last year when he won the pole position at both races in the spring and the fall.
Yeah, it's essentially a weaker right rear spring is what they did to the car. Major change.
We know that many of you also like to relate what's going on the racetrack to your pleasure car at home. The spring weight rating on your cars, somewhere between 200 and 300 pounds probably. The right front springs on these cars are rated at 2,000 pounds on this high bank racetrack. As we look up front at Neil Bonnet, who continues to lead, the rating on the left front is 1,400 pounds. In the rear, they're down around the 300 or 400 range. We can see that's reasonably close to what your pleasure car is at home.
Okay, now Gary, explain what that means to me as a person who's driving a passenger car and driving a race car.
Okay, well, you can imagine if you just push down on the front fender of your passenger car and it goes down an inch. That was your body weight, maybe 200 pounds or whatever you happen to weigh. Okay, these cars, if they're rated at 2,000 pounds per inch on the right front spring, say, these cars may travel that suspension an inch and a half or 2 inches even in the corners. So that means it takes 2,000 pounds to move that spring 1 inch. It's quite stiff.
A lot of pressure on the springs as the weight shifts when you go into a turn, and they go into turn here at about 150, 160 miles an hour.
Well, the G-forces that are generated because of the high bank angles. On a flat track, you won't get that kind of travel, but on a bank track, you've got to have some stiff springs just to keep the car from dragging.
Jeff Bodine has moved the Levi Garrett Chevrolet in for a pit stop. Jerry Punch right there.
Well, this would be a scheduled stop for Jeff Bodine, the Levi Garrett Chevrolet. They add fuel to the car. They keep the car on the jack in a lengthy period of time. Maybe Gary Nelson can comment on why they keep the car jacked up so long when they've already finished changing tires. You saw the car number 5 stay on the jack for a lengthy period of time while they put those fuel cans in. Gary?
Well, the radio communications sometimes aren't as clear as we would like, and so the signal for the driver to leave the pits is when they drop the jack. So the jackman, once the tires are changed, he'll be watching that gas man to let him know the tank is full. Then he drops the jack, driver drops the clutch, and away he goes.
And while we're talking about the Rick Henry crew, we introduced you early in the broadcast as head of research and development for Hendrick Motorsports. What the heck does that mean?
That means on my day off on a Sunday like this, I get to come to the races and enjoy myself. But really, we're working 5 days a week in the shop trying to prepare for a better Hendrick Motorsports in general. We're trying to, all the new ideas that we've always wanted to try, we've never had time because the schedule is so hectic. You just race week after week and you spend, 3/4 or at least half of each week preparing for the next race. So it's hard to improve. So we've been able to take this year and try a lot of new ideas, research and development.
But you will be running a few races with the R&D car.
Oh, definitely. We tried to run Daytona. We were crashed in the qualifying race. So our next race will probably be in May, maybe Talladega or Charlotte. Hopefully 8 races from here to the end of the year. Here's Darrell Waltrip finally coming in. He was hoping for that yellow flag, but he didn't get it.
Well, Darrell Waltrip in. He's one of the last cars to make a scheduled pit stop. Good pit stop by Jeff Hammond and the crew. About 15 seconds flat. 2 right-side tires and fuel for Waltrip.
Very quickly, Gary, who will the driver be in that R&D car? Cyril van der Merwe drove it at Daytona.
We're very happy with Cyril van der Merwe. He is definitely a world-class driver with a lot of talent. He's definitely a good test driver for us. We like him very much. Hopefully we can get him more time as the year goes on.
So the South African, who's been driving in IMSA in the past recent years, will be trying his hand at Winston Cup racing again in 1988 under the direction of Gary Nelson. We'll be back as our live coverage continues at The Rock. Continues to lead the Goodwrench 500 at North Carolina Motor Speedway. There is Neal in the Valvoline Pontiac, number 75. Running in second spot is Sterling Marlin. Third is Bill Elliott. Fourth is Lake Speed, followed by Buddy Baker, Alan Kulwicki, Terry Labonte, and Dale Earnhardt. Those cars in the lead lap. A lap down would be Phil Parsons, Ken Schrader, Darrell Waltrip, and Davey Allison.
And Phil Parsons just made a pit stop not too long ago, and Bob, I'm sure that the fans are wondering, well, what about car number 4 that we saw for so long up there battling for the lead? Rick Wilson made a routine pit stop, took a little extra time in the pits. He came back out and ran about a half a dozen laps, pulled it back into the pits, and we haven't seen him since.
Well, it's starting to get a little nervous time for Dale Earnhardt. Neil Bonnet is on the same straightaway to lap Dale Earnhardt now, so that's really an idea of how fast that 75 car of Neil Bonnet's is running.
Just been super strong all the way through this race, despite the fact that he didn't qualify well.
Just a moment ago, before we went to our commercial break, Darrell Waltrip had just made a pit stop, and we saw him right on the back bumper of Neil Bonnet. Now, Waltrip had new tires on the right side. Bonnet has been out there for a while. Since he made his pit stop, Bonnet was able to pull away, even with Waltrip having the new tires on the right side.
All right, our Napa mid-race recap. We are just past the halfway point, and at the halfway point, the leader was Neil Bonnet. He had pitted on laps 89, 141, and 228. And we anticipate his next pit stop to come around the 323 lap mark if we don't have any yellows between now and then. There have been 3 caution periods for a total of only 17 laps. There have been 9 leaders and 12 lead changes. 41 started, 35 remain in the race, and there are 7 cars on the lead lap. And the average speed of the race we'll get for you in just a moment. Out of the race at the moment is Richard Petty, who crashed. Jimmy Means dropped out with mechanical problems, as did Brad Teague, and the number 4 car of Rick Wilson. Average speed of the race is 121.893, and also out of the race is Mickey Gibbs and Mark Stahl. Now we go back and show you what has happened in the first half of the race, and this is what was experienced by Richard Petty very early.
This was on lap 17 as Rick Wilson attempting to pass Petty going into turn 1. They got together. It sent Petty into the outside retaining wall. He hit it hard. Fortunately, other cars were able to get by, but Petty was out of the race. A lot of damage to the STP Pontiac.
And Petty describes his injury as just a little bit more stoved up of the angle that he hurt at Daytona. Now, here is the 67 car that is spinning. That's being driven this afternoon by Rick Jeffrey. And our third caution period was brought out by a spin. No contact with the wall. The number 93 car driven by Charlie Baker. Also involved in that was Rusty Wallace, but we have had no serious crashes whatsoever in the first half of this race. Only some minor spins. We have seen some great competition in the first half. At the moment, it is Neil Bonnet from Hueytown, Alabama, a member of the Alabama gang that leads this race. Back at Rockingham, and spin has caused another caution period. Ernie Irvin was involved in a minor incident here right in front of the main grandstand that has sent everybody into the pit area, including Neil Bonnet. Now, you guys are watching what's going on the racetrack. Explain it to me.
Boy, it's quite a mix-up. Neil Bonnet was real close to lapping Dale Earnhardt. The caution came out right at the start-finish line. A couple of cars thought Neil had not received the yellow flag, and they kept going. Darrell Waltrip and Jeff Bodine especially. The pace car has now picked up Darrell, and everything's back to normal. They almost had a problem there. I think the 5 car may have pitted too early. The pace cars went by him now. Other than that, everything's back to normal.
In fact, they are holding him a lap in the pits, Gary. I believe because of that, he gained a lap out on the racetrack, so they're leisurely changing all 4 tires. NASCAR official standing in front of the 5 car in the pits, so they're holding him, taking away the lap that he gained when he passed the leader.
All right, now we have a replay of this incident in which Neil Bonnet slowed down dramatically on the backstretch. Look at Darrell go around him.
Yeah, he just moved right on around him. As I'm sure that Darrell was not sure it happened at the start-finish line, and if the caution had, if Neil Bonnet actually had taken the caution, you can't blame the guy for going on and trying it and say, hey, all they're going to do is put me back to that position. So
right.
You stand to gain a lot, but not lose a lot.
Jeff Bodine and Darrell Waltrip both tried it. They're going to hold them both in the pits until the pace car comes back around again. They're going to take away a lap that they tried to take from the competitors, plus a 1-lap penalty for doing it.
Okay, so both Jeff Bodine and Darrell Waltrip are being held in the pit area.
That's a bad break. NASCAR says it in the drivers' meetings. If you pass the leader under caution, they will take away not only the lap you tried to steal from the competitors, plus a lap penalty. They're going to do it, definitely.
Now the field is streaming by the main grandstand here in front of us, and here's Jerry Punch with a report.
Well, Jeff Bodine sitting here in the pits, and they're a little bit frustrated here. As you heard, they are being held a lap, and as Bodine and the Levi Garrett Chevrolet sitting by, and of course Waddell Wilson, the team manager here, talking to the NASCAR officials, and now they motion that Bodine can go ahead and move away. Jeff sort of shakes his head back and forth and will go back on the racetrack, but he has been held the 1 lap he gained plus the 1-lap penalty.
So both Earnhardt, or rather both Waltrip and Jeff Bodine are now free to go back out onto the racetrack. Again, this caution caused by a minor spin here at the start-finish line involving Ernie Irvan. He was running with about 3 other guys, including Dale Earnhardt, but everybody got by him without making contact.
Ernie Irvan, one of the rookie drivers on the NASCAR Western Cup circuit this year.
So, 275 laps have been completed. 492 make up this race. We got a long way to go yet. We hope, though, you'll stay with us. We hope you're enjoying today's live coverage of the Goodwrench 500 at Rockingham, North Carolina, being brought to you by Mr. Goodwrench. No one knows your GM car better than Mr. Goodwrench. No one. By Burger King, where we do it like you do it. By Purolator, the first name in filters for pure oil now and pure oil later. It's Purolator. And by Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. Field under caution because of a spin at the start-finish line involving Ernie Irvan. Let's go to Larry in Pit Central.
Well, Bob, I'm sitting with the man that I think is the superstar of today's race. Earlier this week on Speed Week, I said the racing has become so competitive in Winston Cup racing. You never know who's going to win. Last year was how do you beat Earnhardt? This year it's who's going to be the next superstar. And this man, Rick Wilson, was almost the superstar of this race. What happened, Rick?
Well, you know, the car worked so great today, but, you know, right there, I don't know what lap it was, but the motor went away. Now, I can't say enough for, you know, for the Kodak Film Oldsmobile team, Morgan McClure team. They had that car, you know, driving, you know, just perfect. And I hadn't even run the car hard. That's what, you know, really upset me so bad. I was right behind Neil there, letting him work the traffic. I was following him, counting the laps down.
We've talked so much about Hoosier tires, and Buddy Baker has crept into the top 5. There are 4 or 5 Hoosier shod people getting into the top 5. Are they the biggest factor?
Well, you know, it looks like that. You know, Bill was running awful good on the Goodyears, but, you know, when my tires were the Hoosier tires, I could just be easy with them, and they would still be fast. Now, if I abused them, they would go away. But I could just drive the car so easy, and the car would still go fast, and I never really had to abuse them. And so, in the way the car was handling, you know, the tire problem was my least of my worries.
Well, Rick, we'd like you to stay with us for a couple minutes and sort of watch what's going on here. Maybe you can analyze. And right now, Jerry Punch is with Billy Hagan. He's involved with a team that's doing reasonably well and relates to the Hoosier tire story.
Indeed he does, Larry. This man, Billy Hagan, put this team back together. They went through a lot of tough times the past year and a half, lost some personnel, lost a crew chief. They had some problems inside the team, and Billy Hagan came back and took charge. And, Billy, you've been jumping up and down all afternoon. You've got to be pretty happy.
Well, I am. I missed the race 2 years ago when we won it, so I kept telling the crew, let's have a repeat so I can see it. So maybe this is going to be our day.
The excitement out here is not what's happening on pit road. the tire changing or the engine or the fueling of the cars. The excitement here is watching Billy Hagan on this wooden stand. Now, he's been jumping up and down, and the crew have been walking around waiting for him to fall off so they can catch him. But I tell you, you're excited. You get excited. You love watching your young driver, Sterling Marlin, run this show, and he's pretty impressive. These Hoosier tires are pretty impressive, too.
Well, it looks like maybe we've got everything together like it ought to be. We came to run to the front, and that's where we are right now. That's where we hope to be at the end.
Well, that's Billy Hagan, as he's pretty happy. One crew that isn't happy is Darrell Waltrip, as he's been black flagged and brought back down to be brought back on the pit road, and apparently there will be a problem there for Darrell Waltrip. So tough break for the Tide crew.
Jerry, I think the situation was they only held him one lap. They took away the lap that he gained. Now, as Gary Nelson pointed out, they take an additional lap away, and that's what he's being held for right now, as the green flag reads shot.
Well, that's right. You can bet Darrell's not too happy about it, because there was a question as to whether Neil Bonnet received the yellow flag. Obviously, Darrell didn't think Neil had the flag, so that's why he went on around Neil Bonnet trying to beat him to the yellow, but NASCAR saw it differently.
Green out on lap 279. It's Sterling Marlin, Bill Elliott. Running third is Lake Speed. Fourth is Neil Bonnet, and fifth is Buddy Baker. 4 of the top 5 cars are on Hoosier tires. We have a couple of lap cars there running with first and second, namely Bobby Allison and Rusty Wallace. Then a bit of the separation before we get back to the third place car.
And it looked like there's smoke coming from Bill Elliott's car, number 9.
Smoke. I don't know. Was that tire smoke, guys?
I don't know. He didn't look like it in the turn, but he was in the turn, so maybe it was tire smoke. Let's watch him as he goes through this turn. He goes high.
He slowed on the backstretch just before it started smoking.
Yeah, it's smoking. It's smoking right now.
There's something wrong. It's probably indicating on one of his gauges, because he did let up and then it started smoking.
Let's see if it occurs where it did last. Yeah, you can see the smoke coming from that car. Big time.
And it's only in the turns. It could be that a fender is rubbing against the tire as it goes around the tire. It looks like it might be the left rear, although we don't see it this time as it goes into the turns. Not as well. Yes, we do. You see it there. And Garrett, does it look like that it is maybe that fender rubbing the tire a little bit?
I don't think so. I got to think it's some kind of an oil leak, that maybe a rocker cover or something. It's hard to say, but something caused him to let up even before it started smoking.
Here he comes in the pits.
So let's see if they open the hood.
Well, Dick Berggren can call this stop and give us an indication of what's wrong with Bill Elliott.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, there's a lot of concern here about this car. They're really not doing anything to it. They tried to get a jack under it. Ernie now looking at the right rear corner of the car, pulling the fender out. A lot of fuel got splashed around here. All they did was pull the fender out, and that was it, and he's gone. Let's see if we can find out from Ernie what was the problem. Ernie, what happened? 12-8. 12.8. Ernie doesn't want to talk. He's not very happy at all.
Well, I agree with you guys up here in the booth. It looked like the smoke was coming from the left rear, not the right rear.
Yeah. Dick, did you see some, was the fender bent in against the tire on the left side?
They didn't do any good with it. It's still smoking.
Yep, you're right.
It looks like a broken rear suspension, rear panhard bar, causing the rear end to wander back and forth.
So Bill Elliott with major problems here today.
Tough break for him.
He's still in the lead lap.
Yep.
The leader, Sterling Marlin, is not too far behind him, but Bill Elliott still is in the lead lap at this point.
He can't go along like that without a tire failure.
Okay, now we're getting the information that Bill Elliott brushed the wall, and it is indeed perhaps a situation where one fender, whether it be on the right rear or the left rear, probably the right rear, of course, if he brushed the wall, is rubbing against the tire.
Well, there's a panhard bar, is what we call it, a bar that holds the rear wheel centered on the car. When you pump the wall, you got to pump it pretty hard. It'll bend the bracket to the panhard bar, and that'll cause the left rear tire to get too close to the fender and rub. If he stays out there long, that left rear would blow out.
Well, we'll watch that, and meanwhile, Sterling is catching up and about to put him a lap down.
Yes, he is. He's gaining very quickly on him, and Elliott not able to keep his car down on the low side of the racetrack as he was earlier, and Sterling Marlin is coming in a hurry.
That would explain why Elliott's crew went to the right side to look at it, because he told them on the radio, that's where I saw him let up on the backstretch. He told them on the radio, I hit the wall with the right rear and something's smoking.
Now we're going to get a replay, and we perhaps can see the actual contact with the wall.
Okay, here comes Elliott down the backstretch. Yeah, bam, right there. Hit the wall. That's where I saw him let up. definitely he thought the right rear was rubbing. That's what he told his crew, but it bent the brackets on the rear end, causing the left rear tire to rub.
Okay. And here is Marlin now, right up on the back bumper of the Elliott car and about to put him a lap down, and there's still smoke coming from that Coors 4.
So he still has the tire rubbing a little bit, and as Gary pointed out, that could be trouble for him later on. Of course, the left rear is not quite as critical if it blows as if it were a right side tire, but you really, on this racetrack, you don't want to blow either tire.
What you got to watch for, or decide is it rubbing on the tread, the top of the tire, or the sidewall? There's very little rubber on the sidewall. If it rubs there for just a short time, it'll blow out. On the top or the tread of the tire, it can rub quite a while without blowing out.
Well, the man on the move is Lake Speed. You can just barely see him there at the top of your screen. He is coming on quickly. There is the fourth car on your screen, Lake Speed, closing in on the leader, who is Sterling Marlin. And not too far behind Lake Speed is Neil Bonnet.
And Rusty Wallace hanging in there, not too far behind the Sterling Marlin car. Of course, Rusty a lap down. He would like nothing better than to be able to get up there and pass the car number 44, but so far he hasn't been able to do it.
Okay, an explanation now further of what happened to Bill Elliott from Larry in Pit Central.
Well, some things are even tough to describe on a cutaway car. The Penhard bar is basically hidden behind the rear wheels and rear axle here in the cutaway car, but it's down in this area of the racetrack, or the race car rather, and as Gary told you, what it is, it's a bar that holds the body on straight onto these heavy stock cars. You don't need this on an Indianapolis car, an open-wheel race car, because there's just not that much body weight that swings around as it goes around the banking. But the Penhard bar is right down here in back, basically behind the rear axle.
And that is what's causing Bill Elliott's problems. Rush the wall coming out of corner number 2, and the body is rubbing against the left rear tire of the machine. Well, here we go. Look at this. We got
Rusty Wallace is trying to get back in the lead lap.
He sure is. And he's pulling alongside Sterling Marlin down in the second turn, and Rusty does get his lap back, but look at Lake Speed come forward, now pulling alongside of Bill Elliott. Remember, Elliott is a lap down.
Marlin has slowed a little bit. I don't think that car's running. And here's Bill Elliott moving around on the outside. Is Marlin about to come into the pits?
I think he might be. The car is certainly not up to full song. He stays out on the racetrack, but it's pretty obvious that Marlin is not running as fast as he was just a few laps ago. There is second and third position, Lake Speed, and Neil Bonnet really putting the heat on Sterling Marlin now. Good battle for second developing as Neil Bonnet looks to the outside, coming down the backstretch. 1, 2, and 3 here. Marlin, Lake Speed, and Neil Bonnet. Lake Speed moving to the high side. In the third and fourth turns, he wants the lead. Car a little bit squirrely as it comes out of turn number 4. But he'll not make a pass this time.
And Bill Elliott and Rusty Wallace would love to see a caution flag right now, because they know that if Lake Speed and Neil Bonnet get around there as fast as they've been running today, Bonnet in particular, that they might not be able to stay in that big lane.
The new leader is Lake Speed. He has passed now Sterling Marlin, and Neil Bonnet is alongside Sterling in the fourth turn, and perhaps Bonnet is going to go into second here.
Boy, you know, Elliott moved way up on the track, and the tire quit rubbing and quit smoking, so he definitely found a groove that doesn't abuse or doesn't bend the suspension over near as much to cause the tire to rub. You can bet he's holding his breath.
Lake Speed is the new leader at North Carolina Motor Speedway in the Goodwrench 500. In second is Neil Bonnet. Third is Sterling Marlin. We'll be back in a moment. Lake Speed leads the race. Neil Bonnet is second. Sterling Marlin has gone a lap down. He came in for a stop just a few laps ago. They changed left side rubber, and he goes a lap down to the field. We'll replay the Marlin pit stop. You remember we told you before the break that he was just not quite as fast as he was earlier, and he brought the car down off the fourth turn banking and into the pit area.
And of course he slides into the pits, and they go to work on it, change the left side tires, and he did go a lap down. It's almost impossible on this racetrack to make a pit stop 4 tires and not lose a lap.
Jerry Punch in the pit area.
Well, the unscheduled pit stop for Sterling Marlin, certainly a costly one. We saw him begin to backpedal in the field, and they thought they might have had a tire going down. That's exactly what happened. This is the left front tire off the Piedmont Underalls Oldsmobile. You see the tire was going flat, and the tire blistered. You see the rubber is completely gone. This is the cord showing underneath here, and maybe Gary Nelson can expound on what causes a tire to blister, but you see the tire blistered, and the rubber completely peeled away here on the left front for Sterling Marlin.
Well, obviously, when a tire blisters like that, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. The way I like to explain it is that the rubber was sticking to the racetrack better than it was sticking to the cords of the tire, and it actually blistered the outer part of the rubber off and made the cords show. The thing about that is it was a left front. That's usually the tire that's the easiest on the tire. That corner of the car usually is the easiest on the tires. So I don't know if he just had a bad tire. It looked like it. As far as everybody's gone and not had tire problems, that just might have been a bad tire.
Lake Speed has never won a Winston Cup race. His best finish was at the Daytona 500 in 1985. He finished in runner-up position. He could win today. Here's Dick Berggren in Lake Speed's pit.
No, you're absolutely right, Bob Jenkins. He could win today. I'm with his crew chief, Darrell Bryan. Darrell, what are you guys saying to each other? Are you worrying about winning this thing yet, or is it just too early to start thinking about it?
It's a little bit early. The car's running real well. One set of tires were just a little bit loose. The next set of tires we got a little shove, so we just have to try to find our place on the racetrack to run.
You're on the Hoosier tires. Are you seeing any abnormal tire wear? We just saw some of that with a 44.
No, not really. Our tire wear has been real good all day.
Are you able to run where you want?
I didn't understand that one.
Are you able to run where you want on the racetrack?
Yeah, we can go all the way.
Well, there's a lot of smiles in this pit area, as well there should be. They have really got this team on full song this afternoon.
Lake Speed was not a regular competitor on the Winston Cup Trail last year. He competed in only 13 events. Okay, we can give you now a rundown of how they're running. Lake Speed, Neil Bonnet, Buddy Baker, Alan Kowicki, Dale Earnhardt, and Bill Elliott. Those cars on the lead lap. A lap down, Sterling Marlin, Morgan Shepherd, Ken Schrader, Davey Allison, and the number 10 car of Ken Bouchard. 2 laps down, 27 machine of Rusty Wallace, then Phil Parsons, Mark Martin, Ricky Rudd, and the 11 car of Terry Labonte.
I think the 29 car should be in there as well. He's running right in there with the car number 11 of Terry Labonte.
308 laps completed. And there is Lake Speed, who is once again right up on the back bumper of Bill Elliott and threatening to put Elliott a lap down. There are 6 cars on the lead lap, and Elliott's still using the higher crew, but we have not seen smoke coming from that car as we did a few laps ago. And now Lake Speed moving alongside and trying to put Bill Elliott a lap down. We'll be back in a moment from the Rock. At 312 laps, this is how they're running. Lake Speed is the leader in car number 83. Running in second spot is Neil Bonnet. Buddy Baker is third, the top 3 on Hoosier tires. Running fourth is Alan Kowicki in car number 7. And in fifth position is Dale Earnhardt. And interestingly enough, at the very top of the show, remember Jerry Punch was back in the middle of the field talking about the guys that normally run strong that were back there. Well, listen to this. The guy that's leading, Lake Speed, started 19th. Bonnet started 30th. And Buddy Baker started 27th. And now they're first, second, and third. Well, what about the nuts and bolts of auto racing? How do these cars stay together through a grueling 500 miles? Well, here is Dick Berggren now with the track fact. Track facts are brought to you by the Robert Bosch Corporation, makers of Bosch Platinum, the ultimate spark plug.
Do you ever have something fall off your car that's important, you know, really important?
Big league stock car racers can't afford to have things fall off, so they wire the bolts together to prevent them from loosening. Special chemicals marry threads. Lessons learned in racing have helped develop these locking chemicals. Elastic stop nuts don't worry themselves loose. Where heat is a factor, special castellated nuts with cotter pins are used. Lock washers are everywhere. If fasteners loosen, drivers don't visit here very often. Their attention to the nuts and bolts of racing is part of the search for victory through reliability.
Ned, were you ever leading a race and lost it because a simple nut or a bolt fell off?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the 1965 Trans South 500 at Darlington, South Carolina, where we'll be in a few weeks, a sway bar bolt broke off. I finished third in the race, but I think that I would have won the race had that little bolt not broken. It was probably worth 15 cents back then.
Gary, have any of your drivers ever lost a race because of something very simple?
Well, one time we won a race down in Daytona with Bobby Allison in 1982. We got accused of having exploding bolts on our back bumper.
Boy, do I remember that. They're still talking about that.
Yes, sir. By the way, it did get knocked off. It didn't just fall off, or the bolts didn't explode.
Yeah. Here's Larry in pit central.
For our very careful and close observers of NASCAR racing, perhaps you've seen one extra man over the wall all day working on the front windshield. Yes, it is an extra man, and it was discussed and allowed in the driver's meeting, so there's one extra man. The tire story, here's how the top 10 shapes out. Interestingly enough, it's 5 and 5. First, second, and third on Hoosiers, fourth, fifth, and sixth on Goodyears, seventh and eighth, ninth and 10th. By the way, 11th place, car number 10, Kenny Bouchard. He's on Hoosiers.
Yeah, and Kenny Bouchard is somebody else that we haven't talked very much about this afternoon, but has run a strong race.
Has run a very strong race. He's one of the rookie contenders on the circuit this year. And Bob, let's update the fans. As we were about to go into that track back, we saw Sterling Marlin's car come back into the picture. He had gone a lap down as a result of his unscheduled pit stop. He has since passed Lake Speed, gotten back in the lead lap, and has pulled away. Lake Speed had put Bill Elliott back a lap down, but Elliott now is up there battling once again with him, and still in the lead lap, but just barely as they come off of turn 4. Here's the car number 10 of Kenny Bouchard, the top rookie runner in the race at this point.
Kenny, of course, originally from the northeastern portion of the United States, has moved down to Concord, North Carolina, to be close to the racing operation.
Could be a change for the lead here.
Yes.
Neil Bonney goes down on the inside of Lake Speed. There's Bill Elliott still trying to stay in the lead lap, but Neil Bonney on the prowl once again.
Well, I bet Bill Elliott doesn't want to see that 75 car coming. You know, 75 has already gone by the 9 car several times today, and Elliott's fighting to keep in the lead lap. Right here, 75 goes by, he's going to be down a lap. He's really going to be in trouble.
Well, we do have a new leader. Neil Bonnet has moved to the inside and passed Lake Speed, so Bonnet is the leader, and now on the close side of the racetrack, he passes Bill Elliott, so Elliott goes a lap down.
Boy, it made something easy to do. And it seems, Gary, that after he runs a while on those tires, after he puts on a new set of tires, it takes 15, 20, or 30 laps for him to really get to work, and that's when Neil Bonney does his best work. In fact, he's moving up on Sterling Marlin now to try to, is that Marlin's car that he's moving up on to try to put him a lap down again?
Yes, he seems to get stronger and stronger as you go, and that's really what you struggle for as a mechanic and a driver, to get your car to run in the long runs faster and faster, and it's one of the toughest things to accomplish.
That was the car number 15 of Brett Bodine that he was moving around that has a similar paint job on it. Brett lost quite a bit of time in the garage area earlier. They had some sort of a malfunction on his car, so he lost a number of laps in the garage area.
But Sterling Marlin is the next car ahead of Neil Bonnet. He's a little bit ahead of him right now, but Sterling is the next car threatening to go a lap down.
Yeah. 75 car put Bill Elliott, number 9, a lap down, and now he's going after 44. I don't know if he's going to be able to accomplish that as easily as he did with Bill Elliott. We'll have to see.
Bonnet, as if he were on rails out there on the North Carolina Motor Speedway, leading over Lake Speed. Buddy Baker third, Alan Kulwicki fourth, and Dale Earnhardt running in 5th position. We've still got about 170 laps to go in this Goodwrench 500. Caution comes out once again. 4 cars involved in an incident over there in turn number 2, and Ed Pym is among those most seriously damaged.
And Buddy Baker, who was running in the 3rd position, is also involved. The car number 2 of Ernie Irvin involved, Ed Pym in the car number 98, and Steve Moore in car number 22 involved as well.
Now, I believe that Ed Pym is the only one that's still over there stopped. Buddy has got a badly damaged car, but he's still out there. And there is Neil Bonnet in the pits for a routine pit stop, and so is Lake Speed. They're changing left side tires on Lake and right side on Neil. And most everybody now is headed for pit road.
As usually is the case when a caution comes out at a NASCAR Winston Cup race. Here's Terry Labonte trying to get in some pits.
Let's watch Bill Elliott. If he can get out of the pits first, he'll restart on the front row technically not a lap down yet. He did get out first, so Bill Elliott will be on the front of the restart, so he may have a chance of getting his lap back again.
Bonnet moves out from pit road. Rusty Wallace, Ken Schrader, and Jeff Bodine and the others.
Now this was a break for Sterling Marlin, who had gotten his lap back, so he now if he didn't come back in pits too early, if he did catch up to the field.
Once again, let's go to Larry in pit central.
Bob, a little earlier, Jerry gave us an introduction to the difference between Hoosiers and Goodyears, and it's very visual. You can see it. As you look at these two tires in front of me, that's the Hoosier that is most directly in front of me and closest to you. This is the Goodyear tire. You can see it has that taller profile, the more height that Jerry referred to. It's not nearly as wide as the Hoosier tire. Now, the width does not necessarily make it a better tire. The chemical mixture just seems to have worked a little better on the short tracks and the mid-size tracks. There was a comment that the sidewalls were a little stronger in the Hoosier tires, and stronger sidewalls, and Gary Nelson can refer to this, will work better on a banked racetrack. And by the way, in case you're wondering about what inner liners look like, they indeed are tires within tires, and that can also become very important on a high bank, high-speed track like the Rock.
Well, that's interesting. Here comes Buddy Baker out of the pits. Major damage to the right rear. They have a lot of problems getting that fixed. Hope the caution lasts a little longer for him. On those Hoosier tires, Larry, the wider tire that the Hoosier is, it's a wider, lower profile with a stiffer sidewall. It's a, you know, obviously the only thing that holds the car on the track in the turns is the tires. So the more rubber you can get on the racing surface, the better your car is going to stick. So the Hoosier tires do have more rubber in contact with the racetrack.
Well, Dale Earnhardt is going to be the leader of this race when we go back to green, and Lake Speed will be second. And we'll see now if Earnhardt has the muscle to perhaps stay ahead of these guys who have been strong all afternoon on the Hoosier tires. We'll be back for the restart right after this. Still under the caution flag because of the 4-car accident over in turn number 2 that really did not amount to a whole lot, although there was a lot of body damage to Ed Pim's car and Buddy Baker's. Also involved the number 2 car of Ernie Irvin and Steve Moore, and Buddy Baker has been making several pit stops to get the sheet metal pulled out from the tires, and Dick Bergman is right there.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to start a race team, here's a good way to do it. Here's a piece of a sponsor. Here's a piece of a back bumper. And here's most of what used to be the back bumper on Buddy Baker's car. I just talked to Herb Dabb, who's crew chief this afternoon, and he said the car is in pretty rough shape. It's not only the sheet metal, but they're concerned about the alignment of the various suspension components as well. Baker had been running very well. He'd been running up as high as third when the incident happened. Yeah, Jerry, what's going on near you?
Well, Dale Earnhardt has been trying all afternoon. They're not showing any tire wear, Richard Childers. They're not showing much tire wear. The tire temperature looks good, but the car just isn't ripping the racetrack.
Well, it's a little hard to get a hold of right now, but we keep trying all different things with a stagger and air pressures and all kind of things. We ain't give up yet. You know, we're still trying hard, and, you know, I think we'll be there at the end. These other tires are running a little better, but, you know, maybe we'll find the right combination.
Well, they are trying and searching and hard, long and hard, trying to find what they can do to Earnhardt's car to get him back up there. Anything they can do, Earnhardt will drive it, I guarantee. He's trying to stay up right now, currently leading.
It's just a little past 3 o'clock Eastern time, and if you're joining us, we welcome you to North Carolina Motor Speedway at Rockingham, where the Goodwrench 500 is 333 laps old. The total laps run here this afternoon, 492. Dale Earnhardt is in the lead at the moment under caution. Second is Lake Speed. Third is the number 7 car of Alan Kulwicki. Then comes Neil Bonnet and Sterling Marlin. So they will run a couple of more caution laps here. They're cleaning up the debris caused by the 4-car accident over in turn number 2. The green flag has just come out once again to restart this Goodwrench 500, and Dale Earnhardt is the leader. Second car in line there is Bill Elliott. He's a lap down. So is Mark Martin. The 4th car actually is the 2nd place car. That is Lake Speed. Martin's car slides high on the racetrack as Lake Speed and Alan Kulwicki pass him to the inside.
Rusty Wallace made a late pit stop during that last caution period. They worked on the left rear. They adjusted the track bar on it, perhaps lowering it a little bit to try to get him a little bit of better traction off the turns. We'll see if it works for him.
Bill Elliott, he had a good pit stop, got him up front for the restart, but they didn't get the tire fix from rubbing. It's still rubbing, and it's still a dangerous situation. When he runs hard and runs low, you can see it smoke.
Larry
Gary has a comment at Pit Central.
Now, Bob, before the race, Alan Kowicki told me, well, Dale Earnhardt wasn't hooked up that good in qualifying, and they saw him running that high lane yesterday. He wasn't turning in that quick a laps. But Alan Kowicki told me that somehow Dale Earnhardt always manages to get to the front, and there he is. Now, we know his pit crew has won awards the last couple of seasons, and for very good reason. He came into this particular pit stop segment in 5th place and exited in 1st place. You can see where Neil Bonnet was in at first, out in 4th. Lake Speed pretty much held his own, as did Alan Kowicki. But the big story is that Richard Childress, Kirk Shelmerdine crew. Here is a summary of the caution flags up to this point. See 7 laps. There was a caution flag that lasted for 7 laps when Richard Petty crashed on lap number 19. 3-car accident on lap 141. There were 2 other accidents that were single cars, and then this larger accident here on lap number 329. 5 caution flags up to this point here at Rockingham. That's pretty much the routine, although the green flag segments, I think, have been a little longer than what most people expected. And particularly those long green flag segments really play into the hands of the Hoosier tires. You can see Bill Elliott there in the middle of your screen, thrashing, trying to get his lead lap back. Dale Earnhardt, who has the lead, and one of the real keys of this race so far has been Lake Speed, and there he is, lurking in the Earnhardt-Elliott shadows. And how many races have those 2 cars and drivers won in the last couple of years? For Lake Speed to be right up there with them, it must be a big thrill. Gary, one of the interesting aspects of this race is how the line changes for many of these people throughout the race, but Dale Earnhardt is still on that high line.
Well, Earnhardt ran the first several laps with his new tires down low. He was able to stick low with the new tires on. Now the tires are getting hot. He's back up to his old familiar rim riding groove, and there goes Bill Elliott to unlap himself. Now Elliott is hoping for a caution now to get his lap back if he can stay in front of Earnhardt and Lake Speed.
Meanwhile, Lake has just reeled in Dale Earnhardt. It's only taken him about 5 laps since we went green, and Lake is right there.
Elliott battling hard to try to get back in that lead lap, but on the straightaway with Earnhardt's high groove, he's able to pull away. But here comes Elliott back down on the inside once again, and all the way down on the bottom of the racetrack is Lake Speed.
To take the lead, I believe. Here they come at the line. It's Lake Speed, and he's our new leader.
What a move by Lake Speed. Has 2 cars coming off the 4th turn to beat him to the finish line.
Elliott does not particularly like the situation, however, as he stays up high and challenges and retakes the lead down the backstretch. Steve Moorcar, number 22, a little bit of a factor there, but nevertheless, Earnhardt definitely showed some muscle there by repassing Lake Speed.
Look at that 4th turn. Lake Speed really gets going down low in the 4th turn.
Well, the only car not in the lead lap there is Bill Elliott. And everybody else is fighting for 1st position. Earnhardt, Lake Speed, Neil Bonnet, Alan Kowicki, and Sterling Martin is a lap down. Or is he?
No,
No.
that's
right. He made up the lap.
Boy, what a race. Isn't that something? All of those guys but Elliott for the lead.
And Elliott trying to get back in the lead lap once again.
He sure is, and he does so.
Good match.
But we are seeing the tire smoke again at times from the Bill Elliott car. Caused by when he scraped the wall earlier in the race, causing the body to shift on the race car and to rub against the tire.
Well, obviously the Elliott team isn't too concerned about the smoke. They've seen the tire that they took off that had been rubbing, and they can look at it and they can say, well, obviously it was rubbing on the tread and it shouldn't be a problem. Go ahead and go for it, Bill. Get out front. Don't worry about the smoke. We'll fix it next caution.
Alan Kowicki, it appears, is going toward the back because Neil Bonnet just passed him, and now Sterling Marlin is about to pass Alan Kowicki.
And, of course, Lake Speed has taken the lead once again in the car number 83 as Neil Bonnet tries to move on the inside of Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt still on that high line.
There are the first 5 cars, and they are really having a battle.
That's what the fans came to see. Good, close racing here at the Rock.
They're getting their money's worth, as per usual.
That is some close competition right there. 348 laps into the race, and they're all within, what, a second apart?
Yeah, no more than that, certainly. Yeah. And there are 7 on the lead lap.
Yeah, and they got one more pit stop, at least one more to make before this race is over, should we go green the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think our computer is calculated somewhere around the 420-mile mark. We should be seeing the next series of regularly scheduled pit stops. Look at this. Nose to tail just bumping around on each other out there, and it's all for the lead.
Moving through that pack ever so slowly is the 75 car. He's come from behind He had a fairly slow pit stop. I think they got hung up in the pits a little bit. Now he's making up that ground that he lost in the pits.
At the top of the show, I mentioned the word parity has arrived in NASCAR racing. And this lead quintet that we're looking at, if anything ever exemplified that parity, it's this one. There are 3 people in this group that have never won a Winston Cup race. So if you're looking for sentimental favorites, you're not going to look to Earnhardt because he's won all the money, or so it seems, the last couple seasons. Neil Bonnet is on a roll right now. He's the hottest guy in the world in stock car racing. But Lake Speed, Sterling Marlin, and Alan Kawicki, between the 3 of them, have never won a single Winston Cup race.
And Larry, along with that parity thought, you got 2 Oldsmobiles, 1 Pontiac, 1 Chevrolet, and 1 Ford in the top 5. So certainly you have some variety there. Let's also mention that Harry Gant had gone into the garage area for a while. He has lost about 10 laps in there. He has returned to the competition, but Harry Gant is too far behind now to have any chance of winning this race today.
Neil Bonnet right on the back bumper of the Lake Speed car, and Sterling Marlin is right there also.
It looks almost as if Neil's waiting for a chance. He just says, okay, Lake Speed, as soon as you move up, I'm going to take that spot.
Well, it looks like Neil wants the lower groove, and he may have gotten it right there coming out of 4. Indeed, he did. He's been waiting for the moment to get the inside line, and he finally did it.
Yeah. He showed a lot of patience there, not pressuring him, just staying right behind him.
So now Bill Elliott, running right ahead of Neil Bonnet, again is threatened with going a lap down.
This looks like a replay of a little earlier where Bill Elliott races Lake Speed forever and then looks in his mirror and sees that 75, and you know what's going to happen next.
Fair question.
Average speed of the race is 118.092, and Dick Berggren is in the Elliott pit.
I'm with Ernie Elliott. Ernie, there was a lot of smoke earlier from the rear. What's the situation? Is the car okay? Did you fix it?
Well, it's damaged, and we're not going to have to fix it. If you start now, you're 2 or 3, 4 laps down, so we're just going to have to run it out.
Now, if you can pick up your lap and keep it, can you still win it, or is the car off too much?
I don't think we can win the race. You know, after a few laps, our tires go away, and Neil's tires seem to work real good. He just drives away.
A lot of disappointment here. These guys had set on the pole, and they ran well all day until that one miscue in the backstretch.
Tough break for Elliott, who was the pole sitter for this event, but who had some problems after encountering the wall coming out of corner number 2, and he is just about to once again go a lap down. Well, they've been racing here at North Carolina Motor Speedway since 1965, and down through the years there have been some great races. A new feature on auto racing this year, a Winston Cup replay. Winston Cup replays are brought to you by Purolator, the first name in filters. For Pure Oil Now and Pure Oil Later, it's Purolator.
The media said he was too old. They chided the promoter of the new North Carolina Speedway for bringing aging Curtis Turner back to sell tickets. The 41-year-old Turner had the last lap. He won the inaugural American 500 by 11 seconds over a young buck by the name of Cale Yarborough.
Who'll win the 1988 Goodwrench 500 from North Carolina Motor Speedway? Well, it could be one of about 10 guys still on the lead lap and capable of taking home the checkered flag. We'll be back with our live coverage after this. We have 130 laps to go in this 492-lap event. Neil Bonnet leads the Goodwrench 500 with Sterling Marlin second, Lake Speed third, Alan Kawicki fourth, and Dave Earnhardt in that fifth position. When you look at the guys that are running up front, the one that might hold a possibility of winning this race, in my estimation, is Alan Kawicki. Now, true, these guys that are running first, second, and third are really strong, but at the same time, Alan Kawicki, who was a front row starter, has had a very good race.
He's had a very good race, Bob. He's run consistent all day long, been up there in the scoreboard most of the day in the top 5, and whether he's holding back something, driving that smart of a race, or just what the situation is. But he still is very much a contender and has a good shot at winning his first ever NASCAR Winston Cup race.
Boy, wouldn't that be something for Alan Kulwicki? He's worked so hard over the last few years.
Well, he really has, and of course his best finish in a Winston Cup race was his second, so he is indeed looking for win number 1. How much pressure is there when a driver essentially owns and runs the entire operation?
I've never been in that situation, but I can imagine it would be pretty tough. The driver being the owner, he's going to have a lot of input during the race and in the garage area, and the mechanics are going to have a lot of decisions to make. Where they're going to want to wait and ask the driver. They won't just make snap decisions. They're going to ask the driver and the owner, obviously.
We've been noticing Terry Labonte dropping to the lower groove. Jerry Punch can explain why, perhaps.
Well, problems continue for the Budweiser team. And Tim Brewer, what's the problem with Terry now?
Well, I think a while ago when the thing broke the rotary button, Jerry, it just threw the timing off, and it might have tagged an intake or an exhaust valve. Right now, things lost the cylinder, so we're just going to try to ride it out today.
Problems continue for Terry Labonte.
Can we talk about a rotary button, Gary? How does that work?
Well, it's really called the rotor. It's inside a distributor. It turns along with the distributor, and it points at each spark plug wire at the time that wire is supposed to fire that cylinder. And what he talked about when it was broken, the pointer got knocked off center. If the cap takes a hit, or just for some reason it decides the motor jumps around a little bit, if he goes off on the apron too hard, the pointer on that rotor button will get knocked off center, and it'll fire between two cylinders, cause a misfire. You have to stop and replace that.
Ned, I'd like to get your comment on a driver owning his own team and the toughness it is.
Well, it is tough. If you've got a good crew chief, that can certainly help to ease the pain some, but I say ease the pain. There's a lot of, maybe not financially, but at least as far as some of the decisions that you have to make, as Gary was talking about there a moment ago. But, you know, it's interesting that the concept is moving in that direction now. We've seen Cale Yarborough do it and Buddy Baker do it. Of course, I'm sure that they're looking towards retirement as a driver. They want to build a good, solid race team that they'll have so that it can stay in the sport. But I think it's tough today for a fellow to own his own car, call all the shots, and still be competitive. Alan Kulwicki has done as good a job of that as anyone that I've seen come along.
While we watch Neil Bonnet and Sterling Marlin first and second, what about the situation that your son is in, Ned? Here the car is owned by Cale Yarborough, and he runs a few races and then lets somebody else drive the races that he doesn't want to.
Well, it's a unique situation. One of the first ever is we see Dale Jarrett inside the Hardee's Oldsmobile. Cale Yarborough is scheduled to drive 10 of the Super Speedway races this year, and Dale will drive the other 19. Now he's driving in the Hoss Ellington car with Portaloo as a sponsor in the 10 races where Cale runs. So it is a unique situation, working with two different teams, two different makes of cars. As a matter of fact, he runs a Buick for Hoss Ellington and Oldsmobile here for Cale, but it's a good opportunity for just his second year in Winston Cup racing, and he likes the opportunity that he has.
And the Hardee's race cam giving us some good pictures from inside the car that's being driven by Dale Jarrett. All right. We've got some final pit stops coming up here. Let's talk about that. First of all, to Larry Newman.
Well, Ned, you mentioned earlier there's one more round of pit stops coming up, and by my calculation down here, everybody can run up to about lap 420 if they want to. Now, consider this. This is primarily for you, Ned, as well as Gary. We've had long green flag segments today. The Hoosier tires seem to get better the longer they run, or maybe is it that the Goodyears just go away so much? But as long as the green flag segment has been, and how desirable a quality it is to have these cars as light as possible at the end of the race, would the two of you consider pitting around lap 400 or 405, particularly if you're on Hoosier tires, so that you could go all the way to the end? In other words, pitting, about 10 laps earlier than normal.
Well, I think, Larry, that that's a little far from the end still, lap 420. I think most of them will change two tires, because the real deciding factor on that is, do you need 2 cans of gas or 1? If you can make it on 1 can of gas, a lot of times they'll stop just for gas. But if you've got to put that second can in, you can change tires just that quick. So that you don't think about the weight at this point. You think about how much will it take to get to the finish.
Plus the fact that they want to run as long as they can on that tank of fuel they've got, hoping to catch a caution flag to make that pit stop.
Right, as we've seen, anybody who stops for tires will lose that lap. They'll come out just behind where they were on the racetrack. So they're going to stretch it out a little bit probably maybe over 420. Car number 83 seems to be the one that's getting the best mileage of the lead lap cars. We've been tracking it all day with the race strategy analyzer up here, and it's been working out pretty well.
Well, the lead continues to be held by Neil Bonnet, and Dick Berggren is in the Bonnet pit with Bob Rahilly.
Bob, how long will it be before you pit?
We've got a scheduled pit stop coming up in about 50 laps.
What will you do in that pit stop?
Well, we've been playing with different tire staggers all day, trying to find out what the car really wants for the end of the race. He's only running the car as hard as he has to, and depending on what he tells me with the chassis, I'll either go with rights or lefts for the final dash.
Now, everybody talks about saving the best set of tires for last, but you've got brand new tires here. You've never had them on the car. Why new tires instead of scuffs?
Well, the term the best set of tires means, what it actually means is the best staggered set of tires. All the tires are really the same. It's just when a guy talks about the best tires, he's talking about the best staggered set of tires.
That's the story from Neil Bonnet's pit. Jerry Punch, what's going on where you are?
Well, Sterling Marley's crew is trying to plan their last few lap strategy here. Apparently, Gary Nelson's prediction was exactly correct. Gary, you said if they can go just past the 420 lap mark, it should be okay. Well, Sterling Marlin apparently is going to pit on lap 423, plus or minus a couple laps. That should take him over the checkered flag as far as fuel is concerned. And as you said before, he can come in and probably change 2 tires as quick as they can put 2 cans of fuel in the car. So Sterling Marlin has been coming in and changing left side tires. He's been getting a lot of left side tire wear here in the Piedmont pit.
I got to brag on something because Bob Rahilly told us that his driver, Neil Bonnet, will be coming in on lap 426. That is 50 laps from 376 when he made that statement. Our computer up here tells us that indeed at lap 426, that should be the next pit stop. And we'll see how accurate we are. We're now at lap 380, and Rusty Wallace has spun down the backstretch.
Yeah, coming off turn 2, Rusty Wallace. He's still moving. The leader's going to go by him, I believe.
Yeah, the leaders have already gone past Rusty Wallace as he tries to get his car away from that guardrail and back around to the pit area. And some drivers that were about to go a lap down are racing back to the start-finish line, including Bobby Hillin and a couple of other drivers, and beat the leaders back to the start-finish line.
Some of these cars look like they've been on the North Wilkesboro half-mile this afternoon. Look at the tire mark on Rusty's car.
Boy, definitely. It's been, it hasn't been grinding hard crashes like you normally see at Rockingham. There's been a lot of contact, but not real serious. A couple Buddy Baker's incident with Ed Pym, for instance, but not over and over like we have seen in the past here.
And Gary, you mentioned Buddy Baker. I'm sure the fans are wondering about him. We saw that there was a lot of damage on his car. He had just gone a lap down about 10 laps ago to the leader, so Buddy Baker is a lap down, and as expected, everybody coming into the pit, they still will have to make one more pit stop after this.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be one of those close ones if there's no more cautions, because it'll just be a splash of gas at the end. Everybody on pit road looks like they're all changing 4 tires.
Neil Bonnet, Sterling Marlin in the pits. So is Lake Speed, Alan Kulwicki. All the top 5 are in for some service. And there is a shot of the activity along pit road. Terry Labonte among the last to move in for the stop.
Well, that was a good shot there, showing all of the cars. It gets so hectic on pit road. It's really something. Tires laying out there, people all in a major hurry, and they're all trying to race each other out of the pits. It looks like Earnhardt and Lake Speed. Lake Speed's going to win the race out of the pits.
Sterling Marlin was actually the first car out of the pits, so Sterling had a good pit stop. Jake Jones' his crew did a good job on the car.
Definitely.
Well, we have a replay of Rusty Wallace's spin coming off of corner number 2. Here it is.
Well, the back end just goes out from under it. It looks like the right rear tire is up on the car. He has the wheels locked at that particular point to keep it from going back up on the racetrack in front of the traffic, and it drifts down into the inside guardrail. But maybe that adjustment they made on his car that we mentioned a little while ago, lowering the track bar, maybe it wasn't what Rusty Wallace needed.
Now, Rusty's had his problems today. That's his second spin. One was to avoid a wreck earlier, and that one looked like it was all by himself.
Well, Rusty has finished 7th in the previous 2 races this year at Daytona and Richmond. His finish will be worse today here at the Goodwrench 500. Stops. it is Sterling Marlin, Lake Speed, Dale Earnhardt, Alan Kowicki, and Neil Bonnet. And we are still under the caution. And, of course, it's our policy to take commercial breaks during caution periods so we can show you the racing. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. We welcome you back to North Carolina Motor Speedway, where Speed World is on location for the Goodwrench 500 Winston Cup race. Sterling Marlin leads this event with Dale Earnhardt second, Alan Kowicki third, Lake Speed fourth, and Neil Bonnet in fifth position. Now, we mentioned a few minutes ago how we are employing the use of a computer in helping bring you information about the race. We're calling it the Race Strategy Advisor. It has been giving us some excellent information, but it did, of course, receive a power hit when we lost power earlier in the race, and therefore the information perhaps isn't as accurate as it could be. However, we hope to have it in use all season long and to give you some very good insights into what should be happening as the race progresses.
Well, there's so many variables that a crew chief and a team go through to try and decide when to pit on their gas also. Sometimes if the tires are slow, you stop early just to get your fresh tires on there, even though you have gas in the tank.
Neil Bonnet has himself caught back in a big pack of traffic. He's trying to get back up through there. Rusty Wallace, they're running 3 abreast right in front of Neil Bonnet. Bonnet almost hit Ricky Rudd the last time around and had to really back out of the gas. He's down on the inside of Mark Martin there now as Davey Allison tries to hold off Ricky Rudd from the inside.
I wonder what they're doing to that 75 car. Neil Bonnet's in the pits. They seem to come out, go in leading and come out fifth, fourth. And one time I saw him up under the fender. This past time I didn't watch it, but I think they're doing some adjustments to the car to put him back that far.
He doesn't seem, though, to take long before the car gets to be working. Look at that. He goes to the low side and passes Martin and Davey Allison. Let's go to the pits, perhaps, for an answer to this problem.
Well, Gary, the problem that they're having in the pit is simply a problem with the left front wheel for whatever reason, and there does not appear to be anything defective with it. They're having trouble getting the lug nuts off, getting the tire off, and getting the wheel back on. It's happened twice in a row. Nothing major here, but that's why they're taking longer in the pits than they should.
Makes him have to drive his heart out on the racetrack to get back up front, but so far he's been able to do it.
Yeah, he was caught back there in that traffic jam, and now that has allowed Sterling to get quite a lead on Neil, and he does have his work cut out for him here to try to catch up. Meanwhile, Kowicki is still running in second position, and he is keeping a bit of racetrack between himself and third place and Lake Speed at the moment.
Well, that's one thing about the owners of that car actually being crew members on Neil Bonnet's 75 car. They don't have an owner to answer to on Monday morning why they had bad pit stops. They can look to themselves. So that's one of the things I always dreaded after a long race where the pit stops didn't go just right. We didn't have a reason, but I had to go to the owner and the sponsor and tell them, well, you know, we just had a bad day in the pit.
There is Sterling Marlin. There are 3 in the top 5 who have never won a Winston Cup race. Isn't that correct? Marlin, Kowicki, and Lake Speed. First, second, and third have never won a Winston Cup race. Fourth, of course, Dale Earnhardt, and fifth, Neil Bonnet have. But the first 3 could win their first race here at Rockingham this afternoon. And earlier we talked to Sterling Marlin about the strategy that's going to take to win here at the Rock.
Well, you got to, you know, like I said, this is an awful long race, probably the longest one on the circuit, and it's just, you know, if you're just forcing us to dodge all the wrecks all day and, you know, just keep your nose clean, stay on the lead lap, you got a good shot to win this race because it's been cars come from laps down to win here, and it's, like I said, it's all tough on the engine, so it's been known to tear a bunch of cars, so you just have to watch what you're doing early in the race and not get lap, and if you stay around there at the end, you'll do something.
Well, he indeed did watch himself during the early stages of this race. We have not had that many crashes to speak of. But nevertheless, it's been a steady performance by Sterling Marlin, who has the Piedmont Oldsmobile out front, looking for his first Winston Cup win. Previously this year, he has finished 8th at Daytona and 5th at Richmond.
Very good race driver. Second generation driver. His dad, Clifton Cuckoo Marlin from Columbia, Tennessee, was a top driver back in the late 50s or early 60s. Gave up his career and farming over in Tennessee, and Sterling worked on the farm with his dad for a long time until he could get the right brake. Winston Cup Racing, and certainly one of the right brakes was to get in this car number 44.
Absolutely right. This has been a very fine performing race car down through the years under various drivers. And there are some great shots from the Hardee's race cam. And Dale Jarrett, we're looking, of course, out the rear window, and that's Mark Martin moving alongside. We'll just let the audio and the video carry itself here for a while as we ride with Dale Jarrett.
Okay, this is a good one for my boss, Rick Hendrick. He owns 3 cars that are currently racing together on the racetrack. I believe they're in order of position. Also, they're all 3 of them several laps down. They've been having a good battle, though. It's quite interesting. I hope Rick Hendrick really enjoys the fact that the 3 cars are always competitive. Today, it looked like they were all just a little bit off, and plus 2 of them got caught on the that one caution deal, and lost laps by NASCAR penalties, but they are definitely putting on a good show late stages in the race.
Of course, that's Kenny Schrader in the 25 car, Jeff Bodine in car number 5, and Darrell Waltrip in car number 17, all Chevrolets.
Well, they are beautiful looking cars. The 3 unique different paint jobs on the racetrack happen to belong to Rick Hendrick, and that's you know, they're all Chevrolets, they're all Goodyear cars, and Rick Hendrick is, of course, a big Chevrolet dealer throughout the United States.
All very easily spotted on the racetrack, too, especially the Tide car, of course, with Darrell Waltrip. The only other cars that are as easy, if not easier, to spot are the green cars of Ricky Rudd and here again.
You know, a lot of people call them teammates, but they're really, when they're on the racetrack, they're out there for each inch. They're going to fight each other for every inch of the racetrack that they can get. When it comes down to the finish, the best man may the best man win. If there's something one can do to help the other one during the race, they might think about that, but when they're racing for position, it's every man for himself.
As they are right there. No teamwork displayed there at all as Darrell Waltrip moved to the inside and passed Jeff Bodine as they came out of number 2 and down the backstretch. So Sterling Marlin is your leader at the end of 402 laps. Lake Speed is running in 2nd position. Front row starter Alan Kulwicki is 3rd. Recent winner Neil Bonnet is 4th, and defending race winner Dale Earnhardt is running in 5th. We'll be back after this. Well, in 3 weeks, we will be at Darlington International Raceway for the Trans-South 500. It'll be live here on ESPN at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. That's March the 27th. From the track Too Tough to Tame, Darlington International Raceway, we hope to see you there. Here at Rockingham, it's still Sterling Marlin in the lead in car number 44, followed by Lake Speed and Alan Kulwicki. Let's go down and get a further update on the tire situation at Pit Central.
Well, Bob will delineate this for you in just a second, but just a couple of comments. All of the front-running cars have made either 6 or 7 pit stops so far today. And the last 2 times that the vast majority of them come in, each of them has taken on 4 tires. Here is the top 10, how it breaks out. The Hoosier side, the Goodyear side. 1st, 2nd, 4th. Here's 3rd, Alan Kulwicki, the highest ranked Goodyear racer. We've got 4th place, 5th place, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and so on. Buddy Baker, of course, is the one driver who was running in the top 10 until he had that unfortunate incident that involved also Ed Pym. But you can see there are now 4 Hoosiers in the top 10, and there are 6 Goodyear runners in the top 10 at this point, with probably 1 more race stop to go, 1 more pit stop to go. Dick Bergman has got a further update on pit road.
Well, Gary, Jeff, my calculations are exactly the same as yours, Larry. I'm just taking a walk up and down pit road, and I can't find a crew that says they think they can make it all the way without another stop. So 1 more stop to go. If it happens under the green flag, you can better believe it's going to be gas and go. If it happens under the caution flag, we're going to see some real neat strategy unfold here.
All right, guys, there will be a meeting after this race to get Gary, Jerry, and Larry straight. Now, the race strategy advisor is indeed, as we have been talking about up here in the booth, there will be 1 more pit stop.
Yeah, it looks like it definitely a splash of gas, at least for everybody. Some of them may opt to come in a little early and get the extra speed that the fresh tires might give them. That's a decision that I think most of them will probably wait and just get the gas. You're right, 10, 15 laps from the end.
Yeah, they got enough gas to go, perhaps 10 or 12 laps from the finish. And if they are able to run that far, if there's no other caution flag, they probably would just take on the gas because the tires might not help that much that late in the race.
Well, Ned and Gary, to be specific, I'm in the Sterling Marlin pits, and their calculations are very, very close to what you just were saying. They pitted on lap 383. They could go probably 90 laps under green, which will put them at lap 473. Just 19 laps from the conclusion here at Rockingham. So they have to come back in with 19 laps to go, and they may or may not change tires. They got to have fuel, obviously, but the tire change, well, they're still going to roll the dice and see what's going to happen.
Terry Labonte is coming in with a huge area of black on the side of that race car, and he's pulling behind pit road, and it's all over for Terry Labonte in the Junior Johnson machine.
Boy, he's got to be looking for a car wash.
Yeah, he had definitely been off the pace for a long time. He lost a cylinder a while back, as Tim Brewer mentioned. He was going to try to ride it out, but apparently something else happened too, because there was a lot of smoke on and oil on the side of the car. So Terry Labonte looking for his second Winston Cup championship, but he won't gain any points today.
Well, would that indicate something blue and oil splashed out onto the side of the car, Gary?
Well, they started off talking about a rotor button in the distributor. That would cause it to misfire. That could cause a piston to burn or at least detonate on top of a piston, which would in turn score the cylinder walls enough to where the oil would blow out the breathers and eventually probably run out of oil and cause the engine to blow.
Well, in any case, Terry Labonte is out of the Goodwrench 500. Previously this year, Terry had finished 5th at Daytona and 9th at Rockingham and was 3rd in the point standings going in. Larry?
Oh, Bob, the final, agonizing moments, I guess you might call it, of strategy has begun. And Gary, you can really relate to this. Neil Bonnet has been talking on his crew. We've been picking up the radio transmissions, and one of the big topics of discussion in the last 5 laps was Neil was curious to know where on the racetrack Sterling Marlin is running. Neil seems to think that Sterling Marlin has a strong race car, and Neil still feels he's in a very good position to win this race. He really wanted to know exactly on the track where Sterling was running. He was told that Sterling was running high, and Neil didn't make any comment back, but he was very curious to find that out. By the way, the times that we got was that Neil Bonnet was running about 27.5 and Sterling at 27.1. So Gary, I don't know, Neil's got to go some. He's got a flog to catch Sterling.
Well, Neil definitely is running the worst that he's run of the entire race up to this point. He probably got something misfired on his tire stagger, something like that. Maybe just playing a bad set of tires, because you just don't see him up there charging like he did. And him asking about Sterling Marlin, I think he could run anywhere earlier.
Dick Berggren is with Terry Labonte.
Well, Terry, there's oil all over the side of the car. Let go.
Well, I don't know what happened to it. It lost. It seemed like it was losing some power, and then it started skipping and lost a cylinder, and it just kept getting worse, so we finally parked it.
Terry, we're looking forward to the final pit stop right now, and there's some debate as to whether guys should change tires or not. Based on what you've seen on the racetrack, are tires, fresh tires, critical or not?
They sure are. Anytime you put on fresh tires, you can really run faster.
Well, that's the story from Terry Labonte. He's a disappointed man to be out of it today.
Terry Labonte plays havoc with the ESPN headshots. You can normally use one from year to year, but it seems every other year Terry grows a mustache, and he has it, of course, on this year.
Well, tough day for Terry. They were starting to gain some points and looking towards a championship, but, it's still early in the season. They've got a long way to go.
Here's a battle that's heating up for 3rd as Neil Bonnet begins to move in on Alan Kowicki. Bonnet to the low side of the racetrack, and at the line he has him. So Bonnet beginning to move, and he's got a slower car in front of him that may play a factor. That is Bobby Allison, and both Alan Kowicki and Neil Bonnet slide to the high side of Bobby.
Well, I tell you, when you're off at Rockingham, you're off. You can see Bobby Allison. He's run hard all day. It doesn't look like he's had any problems. He just hasn't been as fast as the leaders.
And here comes Bonnie once again down on the low side of the racetrack. He still has a little ways to go to get around Kowicki, but the main man that he's worried about right now is Sterling Marlin, who is running beautifully, running anywhere on the racetrack he wants to run, working traffic good, and everything going right. Bobby Allison, who's just got passed by those two cars, has gone into the pits for perhaps his last pit stop, right side tires.
There's the Daytona 500 winner. Here's Jerry Punch.
Well, Bobby Allison just has nothing going right today. This Miller Buick trying to get it dialed in. They just cannot get the car to handle here. Allison comes in, and he almost skittered through his 50, slammed the brakes on and slid some 25 feet, and finally got the car stopped. And they're having a tough time. The car is jammed in against the pit wall, as you can see. They're having a tough time getting these left side tires on. Allison now with 4 fresh tires. He will be down and away, but again, losing valuable time.
And right in front of him is Darrell Walker making the pit stop. He's getting right side tires at the moment. Whether they'll go, in fact, the hood's going up on Darrell Walker's car.
Here are the top 10. Sterling Marlin, Lake Speed, Alan Kulwicki, Neil Bonnet, and Dale Earnhardt. 6 through 10 with 423 laps completed. Bill Elliott, Morgan Shepherd, Davey Allison, Ken Bouchard, and 10th is Ken Schrader. Back after this. Back to North Carolina Motor Speedway in the Goodwrench 500. Sterling Marlin leads, and we expect his next pit stop to be on lap 473. That information from our computer, the race strategy advisor. Now we still have this battle raging between Alan Kulwicki and Neil Bonnet. This is for third position. Second at the moment belongs to Lake Speed. And Neil Bonnet and Alan Kulwicki have been battling side by side and nose to tail out there for several laps. Neil will pass Kulwicki by a half car length, and then Neil will get by about a half a car length. They approach slower traffic down the backstretch. Ernie Irvin and Kenny Beerswell will be passed on the high side of the racetrack as they go into 3.
Bonnet has to fall up behind Kulwicki in that battle, but he dips back down to the inside, but didn't have anywhere to go that time as Irvin was down there, so he'll still have to follow Alan Kulwicki around on the outside. And Bonnet's car, just as Gary pointed out earlier, doesn't look like it's working as well now as it did earlier in the race. And it could be perhaps the tire stagger, that last set of tires put on it, is not quite as good. Or maybe the racetrack is changing quite a bit, that the setup that he had earlier is not working as well for him now.
Well, definitely Bonnet is 9 seconds behind Sterling Marlin, who is the leader, and that is very unusual for the way Bonnet's been running today. I think he's hoping for a caution before the end so he can get on some more tires and give it a better run.
And if Neil's car were working now the way it worked earlier in the race, he would, I believe, have caught or at least be very close to Sterling Marlin, but instead it's somewhere between a quarter and a half of a lap.
Well, the crew of Ken Bouchard has noticed that he is currently one of the fastest cars in the racetrack, and he has been told so. But I don't think Ken needed to be told, because he has passed Davey Allison, has actually vaulted up 1 more position in the last 5 laps, and he blew off Dale Earnhardt. Kenny Bouchard is running almost as strong as anybody in the top 10 right now. Remember that Kenny Bouchard is in the run for the Rookie of the Year honors, and I must tell you, I go back a long ways with Ed Pym, and I've got a lot of sentiment for him, but right here is my personal pick for Rookie of the Year 1988 in Winston Cup racing. Mickey Gibbs is probably going to be a part of that. Steve Moore is another rookie candidate in this race, as is Rick Jeffrey.
But unquestionably, Ken Bouchard has had a very strong for 433. Again, 492 laps. We'll make up this race.
Starting to run out of time. Neil Bonnet really would like to have a caution so he could get his car adjusted and hopefully get it back onto the times that he was turning earlier before this last pit stop.
We mentioned a little while ago that Darrell Walker, the hood, had gone up on his car. He lost several laps in the pits. He is back out in the running now, but Darrell, as a result of being penalized back earlier in the race, you can see him right in front of car number 44 of Sterling Marlin, but he lost extra time in the pits on his last pit stop.
Early in the race, we wished good wishes to those who are under the weather, so to speak. And one of those we forgot was Elaine Oldham, the wife of Greg Oldham, who was an ESPN photographer who had some surgery on Friday. And we hope that she's resting well in Indianapolis. Actually, Nobles. Sterling Marlin from Columbia, Tennessee, is leading the Goodwrench 500.
Boy, he's running away with it right now. Yeah, Lake Speed's about 8 seconds behind now.
We'll get an interval here between first and second, Marlin and Lake Speed. And I'll tell you, it's going to be pretty significant. Here comes Sterling Marlin through the tri-oval and into turn number 1. Lake Speed right now, tri-oval, and the
according to our stopwatch, and we'll continue to check the progress, but it's about a 7¼ second lead for Sterling Marlin, and you figure that an entire lap is, what, 24 seconds, something like that?
Yeah, right now they're up in the high 26s to pass Gardner.
Most of them are running over 27 seconds, and that's about 2 seconds slower than they qualified, but that's not that unusual as the race goes on. You get a lot of rubber and grease and oil on the racetrack.
Their second place, late speed, Jackson, Mississippi driver. Now Sterling Marlin has traffic behind him. That is Kyle Petty in the Citgo Ford. And the other car is Brett Bodine in the Bud Moore prepared Crisco machine. Marlin has, well, we're on 38, about 50-some laps to go, and he will have his first Winston Cup win of 1988. Will he be able to do it? Well, stay with us, and we'll let you know. Rockingham, North Carolina, and the Goodwrench 500, where Sterling Marlin continues to hold on to first place. Got Darrell Waltrip running with him right now, but Darrell is a couple of laps down to the field.
In fact, more than that, I believe. He's perhaps 4 or 5 laps down.
He came into the pits and they opened the hood and they worked on the car for a long time. Changed 4 tires, sent him back out. He looks pretty fast right now, but he's got a long way to go. No chance of making it up today.
Looked pretty good. He was 11th at Daytona and 4th at Rockingham and was 5th in the point standings going in, but he will not gain a whole lot as a result of the performance here this weekend at Rockingham. There's Eddie Bierswale in car number 23, passed by Sterling Marlin on the backstretch.
Yeah, this track seems to have changed. Sterling Marlin ran mostly in the back of the top 5 for the almost 3/4 of the race, and now he looks like he's running his own race, pulling away.
Kyle Petty had just made a pit stop a moment ago. The Wood brothers changed the right side tires. He's back in now. They're changing the left side tires. Harry Gant slowing down once again as Sterling Marlin moves around him. Gant has certainly had his problems here today. He was in the garage area for quite a while.
Have there been any surprises to you guys in this race at this point? Any major things that either have or have not happened that you thought would or would not?
Well, in my case, I was really expecting Elliott to dominate or run up front all day and be there at the end. And when he hit the wall on the backstretch, whether it was by himself or whether he was helped, we don't know. But that was a big surprise to me to see Elliott into that kind of position.
I think it changed the complex of the race to some degree as well. And I doubt if many of those people down on the pit road, they knew that the Hoosier tires were going to run good after they heated up a little bit, but I don't think that they expected them to be as superior as they have shown here today, because they really have done a good job.
You know, if I may do a little speculating, earlier in the race, Sterling Marlin had a blistered left front tire, a Hoosier. Now, later I heard Dick Bergman talking with Barbara Hilley, Neil Bonnet's crew chief, talking about putting brand new tires on the car that hadn't been tried on the track. Well, a lot of times the tires are, you don't know about them. They might be a little soft. Neil could have a blistered left side tire, probably a left front, if, you know, that's just speculation, but that could be one reason why he would be running slower. That's when I would say a bad set of tires is one that blisters.
Well, Larry Newber has been watching the pit strategy all afternoon, and let's get a report from him down in Pit Central.
Bob, the first impression that I have, what strikes me the most strongest, is how consistent these crews have been. We're going to flash by you now the first 3 primary pit stops and how the positions change. You see that at the lap 141 pit stop, Morgan Shepherd was the big loser there. Earnhardt had lost a lot of time in the first pit stop, but in the 3rd pit stop coming up, you'll see once again consistency, and that seems to have been the norm all day long. You can see that a difference of positions between in and out of the pit stop of 5 is nothing. You're talking about work being done between 15 and 20 seconds, and to come out that close, come out even in the same range of 5 or 6 cars is really remarkable. It shows great consistency as well as great proficiency on terms of the crews. Now, Jerry Punch is out on pit road watching this Sterling Marlin story. It's very interesting. Remember that Sterling Marlin has never won a Winston Cup race.
Well, he never won one. You're right about that. But the team really has come back from adversity over the past year and a half. And the reason they've come back are two men. We talked earlier with Billy Hagan, the team owner, but this man right here, Jake Elder, his nickname was Suitcase Jake because he traveled from team to team. He never did stay happy very long in any one place. Billy Hagan told me a minute ago, he said, I bolted this guy's suitcase to the floor. He's staying put here for a long time because he has turned us around. This guy right here, Jake Elder, increasing the Sterling Marlin. Mike is with us from here today.
Well, he may be brewing the winning car here if things continue the way they have been going for the last 40 or 50 laps. Marlin able to maintain about a 7-second advantage over second place Lake Speed. Passing some of the slower cars, and there is the shot from the rear window of the Dale Jarrett car as Sterling Marlin approaches him and goes to the high side of the racetrack.
Sterling having no problem moving around Jarrett. Of course, he gave him room to run, and that's what he should do. He's running faster. He's putting another lap on him, so he moves out of the way and lets him do it.
Boy, those are just excellent pictures from the Hardee's race cam. And a crash. Bobby Hillen has spun on the backstretch. We've seen several crashes out there today. Rusty Wallace lost it there a few laps ago, and now Bobby Hillen has slid to the inside of the track coming out of turn number 2. I don't know whether he did anything. Doesn't look like he hit the wall at all.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the tires look like on that 75 car.
Tough break there for Dale Jarrett. He had just lost the lap. He tried to beat Sterling Marlin back to the start-finish line. He couldn't quite do it, so he went another lap down.
And so goes the drama as for a last-second pit stop under green. That's all down the tubes now and out the window because everybody is going to come in now and get the tires that they want on and the fuel that they need to finish this race.
Everybody will have enough gas to finish. It depends on who gets the best tires on from here on. I think those 4 front-running cars, you could almost toss a coin over.
And, of course, the field will be bunched up for the restart, so that 7-second advantage that Sterling Marlin had on Lake Speed goes by the wayside also, and Jerry Punch is in the pits.
Final pit stop of the day here at Rockingham, North Carolina Motor Speedway, as Sterling Marlin brings the car in. The Piedmont Airlines Underall Oldsmobile, and Jake Elder again goes to the left rear of the car and will make an adjustment on the chassis there. The crew now having changed right side tires. Now back around to the left side, we'll change left side tires. 4 tires all the way around. And car number 83 also in the pits, of course. That's Lake Speed. All the cars on pit road for their final stop of the day. And back to Sterling Marlin here. Left side tires getting on that car as they're having trouble with the left front tire. And car number 75 moving down pit road. That, of course, is Neil Bonnet. And Dick Bergen's up near Neil Bonnet. Dick?
Bonnet just left here, Jeremy. Tagged by Alan Kowicki, the drag racing down the pit road here. Bonnet also a 4-tire change.
So the leaders have moved back out onto the racetrack once again. And who got out first, guys? Was it Sterling? Nope, Lake Speed, I believe.
And, of course, the cars that didn't stop the last time around will come in for a pit stop this time as they catch up to the field.
Sterling Marlin is pitting again.
Yeah, he beat him out. Now he has to come back in for some reason.
Could this spell trouble?
Let's see what they're doing.
Oh, Marlin ran over a hose, which might indicate a penalty. Or, well, of course, that's up to the discretion of the NASCAR observers down there. So Marlin, in any case, is back out there on the racetrack.
And they were concerned whether they had the lug nuts tied on the left front there, too. They went back and rechecked those just to be sure.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. They were working on the left front.
For those of you who have tuned in to watch the Barber Soft race from Miami that was run recently, we will have that at the conclusion of our presentation of the Goodwrench 500. Jerry?
Well, the trouble with Sterling Marlin's car was the air hose, actually air wrench on the left front of the car malfunctioned. And as you said, he came back in, and they had all but one lug nut tied, and that lug nut was not tied. And Jake Elder said, no way we're going to let this kid go back on the racetrack and try to run these last few laps with a possibly not completely tightened lug nut. So they brought him back down pit road, gave up position on the racetrack, but they came in, tightened it back up, and he's back on the track, but he's back in the pack.
Okay, so there's no violation. He did not run over a hose, as we were earlier told. Now, the reason we are under the caution is because of a spin coming out of turn number 2 and down the backstretch by Bobby Hillen Jr.
Boy, that'll ruin your day. Come into pits leading and have to come back in again, especially this close to the end of the race. It's the kind of things that crew chiefs have nightmares over.
And we see Hillen's car, as it spins down to the inside, hits the inside retaining wall just a little bit, but Hillen was able to come on around, so he continues in the race.
So we will be back with more of the Goodwrench 500 from North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham after we pause for this. It's Lake Speed, Neil Bonnet, Dale Earnhardt, Alan Kulwicki, and Sterling Marlin in the top 5 as we near the conclusion of this 500-mile race here at Rockingham. There's the leader, Lake Speed in car number 83, going to the inside to pass the slower car of Ricky Rudd.
But on the restart of this race, Bill Elliott was up front. He has moved away from Lake Speed. He's in the lead lap now. Should he get a caution, Bill Elliott could be right back in the thick of this battle.
Yeah, you know, remember Ernie Elliott earlier talking about it. How would you like to play poker against Ernie Elliott? Old poker face, huh?
No chance to win, huh?
Well, you know, earlier we showed you a track back concerning nuts and bolts and how a little element can come off a car and cause a lot of concern. And Dick Berggren is here with a follow-up to that.
Yeah, and I've got a little element right here that's missing, Bob Jenkins. There's supposed to be a rod end at the tip of this shock absorber. Well, they just took this shock off Kyle Petty's car because it was missing. That means it's not hooked up. Now, I'm going to make you a promise, and Ned Jarrett, Gary Nelson, I'll bet you'll agree with it, and that is from here on, all those guys in the front of the field are going to start hearing things shaking loose and getting ready to fall off.
Just as Gary said they would when we opened the show.
Well, you can hear it, that's for sure. From the pitch, you can hear it if you're a crew member on a leading car.
You can hear all that little tingle from standing in the pit area.
You go over it over and over again in your mind. Did I tighten that up? It won't break now, will it?
And Ned, I'm sure you have experienced many times being in the lead and getting down to the last 20 laps, and boy, something just doesn't seem right.
Well, I'll tell you, the time that it comes to mind the most, Bob, was when I won the Southern 500 at Darlington in 1965, and I don't say this in a boasting manner, but the record books show that that's by the largest distance that a 500-mile race has been won in NASCAR Winston Cup competition. I won by 14 laps. So you can imagine what I was hearing inside of that race car, just saying a prayer.
Well, there is a big difference between boasting and the facts, and that you just told us was fact. Outstanding performance, winning by 14 laps. Here's Larry in pit center.
The man on the hot seat right now is Lake Speed. About 3 or 4 laps ago, he came off the number 2 corner and almost lost it. He was trying to get around Ricky Rudd. You can see there Sterling Marlin, Ken Schrader, Rusty Wallace on the right of your screen, and Dale Earnhardt. I'll tell you what, at breakfast this morning, somebody asked me who I thought was going to win the race. I said, well, I think Dale Earnhardt. I watched what he was doing yesterday in practice. Somebody asked me about 100 laps ago, who do you think is going to win the race? I said Neil Bonnet. I think I'll stick with that pick right now. This is a very interesting pack right now, but Neil Bonnet is filling the rearview mirror of Lake Speed, and Lake Speed is well aware of it.
All right, so Larry, you predict that Neil Bonnet will win this race. So we'll go to our other people on the broadcast to find out who they think is going to come out on top. Next, Dick Berggren, who's your choice for the victory here this afternoon?
Well, Bob, I've got to go with Bonnet as well. This is the same car that he used to win the race at Richmond 2 weeks ago. He won last week in Australia. The team is very, very sharp today. The car is very sharp. I think Neil Bonnet's going to be in victory lane before the day is done.
Dr. Jerry Punch, your prediction, please.
I tell you, Neil Bonnet likes this racetrack. I remember a year ago when he came from 2 laps down in this race and nearly won it. In fact, he ran out of gas with a few laps to go, but this is his kind of racetrack. He loves this place. He's won here before. He's going to be awfully tough to beat. In fact, I have just been told that possibly Lake Speed did not get enough fuel. They only got 1 fuel can in the car, and I've been told by our runners out here that they may not have enough fuel to go all the way, so we're going to double check on that and let you know. But Neil Bonnet is my pick to win it.
All right, now we need to move to the booth and get a prediction of Ned Jarrett.
I'm going to go Sterling Marlin. Even though Neil has run exceptionally good all day long and looks to be running well like he did a little bit earlier in the race, but Sterling Marlin is coming. He was back in traffic. He made that late pit stop, was back in traffic, but he's out of that traffic now. Even though he's some 4 or 5 seconds behind, he's coming along. So my pick is Sterling Marlin.
Gary?
Take Neil Bonnet just because of the momentum his team has shown recently and the way his car has performed. It looks like he might have had a bad set of tires. He's running well now. But I'm also going to put a side bet on Bill Elliott. There's a lot of dicing for position for the cars 1 lap down. If one of those cars gets out of shape and creates a caution, Bill Elliott's right back in it. And you got to count on his experience here at this track.
Can I get out of a prediction by saying that I'm the anchor? And
No. Wait a minute.
Well, I have a tendency to go with Bonnet, but because 3 of the 4 of you, or 3 of the 5 of you, 4 of the 5 of you have picked Neil, just to be different, I'm going to say Lake Speed. So we've got 1 for Lake and 1 for Sterling and 4 for Neil. So we'll see how this thing shakes out. At the moment, it is Lake Speed leading over Neil Bonnet, and Larry has a comment that Gary, I'm sure, will appreciate.
Well, Bob, you pick Lake Speed, and you go along with the TRW people who have awarded their mechanic of the race to Darrell Bryant, the crew chief on Lake Speed's number 83 Win Kmart car.
Well, Lake Speed has definitely put on a show today. Can you believe how much he's led the race for being, you know, coming from as far back as he did, running up front like he is? It's really impressive. Bill Elliott's fighting him all day. As soon as Neil Bonnet seems to catch Bill Elliott, though, they go right on by.
And here is Neil Bonnet about to make a race out of this thing. 4 wide down across the start-finish line. Bonnet has got the lead. Yes, into turn number 1, a clean pass. Bonnet. Here comes Lake Speed, though, back on the inside in turn number 2, but Neil pulls away as they go down the backstretch. And that's Bill Elliott right ahead of him.
Looking trio there.
20 laps to go. Neil Bonnet about to win, or at least he is in a position to win, his 2nd consecutive Winston Cup race and his 3rd NASCAR race in a row. Of course, the race in Australia last week was not a points-paying event, and so it's not a Winston Cup race, but nevertheless, it was a NASCAR race, and Neil won it also.
Now, my man Sterling Marlin's going to have to pick up the pace a little bit. He's gaining about 1/10 of a second a lap. When I made my prediction a moment ago, he was about 5.5 seconds behind the leader. He's got it down now to about 4 7/10 seconds, but he's got several cars to pass, and of course that abuses the tires, and he's running the car awfully hard. He's about to move up on Alan Kowicki, who is running in the 3rd position now. And so he's got him to contend with. That certainly won't be easy, but I don't believe he's going to have enough time to make up the distance between he and Neil Bonnet.
So Darrell Bryant has been honored here this afternoon, and let's get a word from him as we go once again to the pit area.
Well, the thing I really want to know is, do you have enough gas in that car to go all the way, Darrell?
Yes, we're good on fuel. We go all the way on the fuel and the tires now.
How is the car running? Can you win this thing? Can you beat Bonnet?
Well, Bonnet just got around us. He's been tough all day. I don't know where we can get back around him or not. We're going to try.
Now, here's another team that's never won a Winston Cup race. Lake Speed looking for victory number 1.
Boy, that's one of those nightmares that you just hope doesn't happen for Sterling Marlin to be leading the race, come in the pits, have that kind of a problem. I hope something happens to get him back up to the lead group, because he really deserves a stronger finish than where he's running now for.
Well, the laps continue to click away. It's 476. That means we've got only 16 more laps to go before the checkered falls on this 500-mile race here at Rockingham. And once again, it is Neil Bonnet leading Lake Speed, with the 3rd position belonging to Alan Kowicki, then Sterling Marlin, and 5th is Dale Earnhardt. We have 12 laps to go in the Goodwrench 500. Lap 480 is on the board. 492 completes the distance. There is the best battle on the racetrack, and it is for 3rd position. Alan Kowicki has 3rd at the moment, but right behind him, pressuring him, is Sterling Marlin, the guy that Ned says is going to win this race.
I might back off a little bit. He needed a caution to do that. He was gaining at the time we said that, but we also said he was going to have a tough time getting around Alan Kowicki, and certainly he's having a tough time right now as he tries to move up on the inside.
Boy, Ken Bouchard has been putting on a heck of a show also. I wonder where his final finish is going to be.
It looks like he's heading for a top 10 finish here this afternoon, which is very good for a rookie in the type of competition that we see on the Winston Cup circuit today.
There is Marlin pulling alongside now Alan Kowicki down the backstretch. Again, this is the battle for 3rd place. And I think I might want to change my prediction, too, on Sterling winning, or rather Lake Speed winning this thing, but I don't know. Neil looks very solid at the moment to me.
Yes, he does. They're being given the 10-lap signal, so it won't be long till we'll know who is the winner. Ricky Rudd has slowed dramatically out on the racetrack. In car number 26, Ricky had It's not really been, he ran good at the beginning of the race, but he's just not been up to par, but he's going to try to ride it out, but he's only running about perhaps 90 or 100 miles an hour.
Sterling is having all kinds of problems passing Alan Kulwicki. Now he has about a half a car length advantage at the line. Benny Parsons is the slower car they're approaching in turn number 1, and Sterling is going to have to lift, and that allows Alan to maintain a half a car length advantage. Now they come out of the second corner. It's at a dead heat down the backstretch. Marlin may have it, though, into turn number 3. At the end of the backstretch, it's still side by side.
Very good battle there, and you notice the courtesy that Benny Parsons showed. He got completely out of the way, let them have the racing room that they needed.
Yeah, that's why they call him Gentleman Benny.
And Alan Kulwicki also, guys, gave Sterling room to go for it, so a very gentlemanly gesture on his behalf. Getting back to the tire story, remember we documented earlier at Daytona that Neil Bonnet and the Raymont crew said they could have gone the distance on one set of tires. What's not been the same here at Rockingham. There has been amazing consistency in the total number of tires used by the top 5 teams. Dale Earnhardt's team on Goodyear has gone to 24. Sterling Marlin on Hoosiers, 24. Alan Kulwicki's car on Goodyear has gone to 22. Lake Speed car on Hoosier, 24. And your current leader, Neil Bonnet, has gone to 28 Hoosier tires, more than anybody else in the top 5. And by the way, I want to say, remember, I was the first one who picked Neil Bonnet, but I cheated. I was the first one, right, guys?
Oh, stop bragging. You know, I think that's something we need to talk about here. You remember at the Daytona 500, Neil used a total of 9 tires, and here he's used, what did Larry say, 28 or something like that. Why is that? Is Daytona not as rough on tires as it is here?
Oh, no, it's not nearly as hard on the tires because even though the speeds are considerably higher, they'll use a harder rubber compound there, but the turns are banked higher, and you don't get quite as much centrifugal force there as you get as you go into the turns here at Rockingham.
Yeah, the compound of the tires here is definitely softer than it would be at Daytona. The tires are wearing quite a bit faster than they would at Daytona.
Plus the fact you're running 492 miles here to make 492 laps to make 500 miles. At Daytona, you only run 200 laps.
Yep, good point. All right, there are 4 laps to go in the Goodwrench 500. We continue to watch this battle for third. Marlin and Kulwicki are side by side out there and touching sometimes. Marlin right now has third position.
But Alan Kulwicki is trying to take it away once again.
The battle rages on. We're coming up on the finish of this race, and it is Neil Bonnet leading Lake Speed. There they are, and that's a pretty close battle in itself. Perhaps is Lake laying back at this point, waiting for the white flag, gentlemen?
Time will tell. It won't be long. He's got whatever he has. If he has anything left, he better start using it.
Boy, he's right there, isn't he?
Coming up on 2 laps to go. Once again, the leaders pass Ricky Rudd, and we've seen some smoke coming from the rear of that race car, indicating that something serious has gone wrong with it. 2 laps to go. The next time by, it'll be the white flag. Neil Bonnet may be in a position to win another Winston Cup race.
But wouldn't that be something for Neil? He's on a heck of a roll.
Certainly going his way.
This will be his 19th Winston Cup win if he were to take the checkered flag, and it looks like that he may be doing so. The white flag is displayed by Harold Kinder, and we've got only 1 more lap around this 1.01-mile racetrack at North Carolina Motor Speedway. Lake Speed is dropping back just a little bit, apparently convinced now that he just doesn't have it to pass Neil, and he's going to settle for a second-place finish.
Or maybe is he out of gas? Maybe he's low on gas. I don't know.
I think he's going to finish. Here they come off of corner number 4. Neil Bonnet from Hueytown, Alabama, wins the Goodwrench 500. Second is Lake Speed. And here comes third. Sterling Marlin pulled away from Alan Kulwicki in the closing laps to finish third. Kulwicki was 4th. And finishing in the 5th position is going to be Dale Earnhardt. Neil Bonnet is on a roll. There is no question about that. The 2nd consecutive Winston Cup victory and the 3rd consecutive NASCAR victory for Neil Bonnet. Now here's a replay of this battle for that 3rd position that Marlin ended up with.
And Kowicki went in very hard, almost too hard, trying to make that last-ditch effort to get around Sterling Marlin. Of course, it cost him, but he had no choice but to go for it right at that point. And, of course, he was not able to pull it off, and Marlin came home in the third position.
So the Goodwrench 500 at Rockingham, North Carolina has ended with Neil Bonnet pulling into victory lane. And it's all been brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By the Robert Bosch Corporation, makers of Bosch Platinum, the ultimate spark plug. And by Quaker State Motor Oil, the big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. And we'll be back with our visit with Neil Bonnet in victory lane right after these messages. Neil Bonnet beats Lake Speed to the finish line by 64 hundredths of a second. It was a great race with Neil Bonnet coming out on top once again. Down to the pit area and Jerry Punch.
Well, Neil Bonnet climbing out of the Valvoline Pontiac, and his wife Susan comes in and gets a big hug and a kiss, and Neil could barely stand up. First of all, Neil, congratulations on a tremendous win.
Boy, Jerry, I can't tell you how much the Raymock team has worked this winter. And, you know, our sponsors, Valvoline, all the people been with us. Budweiser's been with me, and it's just a good day for all of us. I'm telling you, it was a tough day. We kept getting behind, we'd come back. We'd get behind, come back. The car just ran super all day.
Well, Butch Mock and Bob Rahilly worked awfully hard, but how about those tires? You got to be pretty pleased.
I tell you what, Bob Newton's been working with us all year with his Hoosier tires, and, you know, we took a little bit of a beating on qualifying to, you know, this weekend, but I just felt like they'd be good in a race, and they showed up. They just kept coming back. You know, Goodyear's been good with us through the years, and all you're going to see is Goodyear build better tires, and they'll be in here mixing it up with us again. So, you know, Goodyear and Hoosier both got us something good to race with.
We at ESPN went to your house back last fall, and it was almost a tearful evening. You were sad. You weren't sure whether your career was over. You said, I'm going to come back whatever it takes. I'm working awfully hard. It's got to feel awfully good to you to come back now. 2 wins in a row. You're back on track.
Well, I tell you what, Jerry, you know, a lot of that had to do with the fans, and I can't thank them enough. I laid there, and you saw me hit down there trying to get ready to go, and I didn't think I could do it. And I kept having a lot of people talk to me, and a lot of doctors work with me. And we came back, and I tell you what, it's certainly been worth it. My team worked just as hard as I did all winter, and hopefully I can pay them back.
What a tremendous comeback. Neil Bonnet wins the Goodwrench 500 here at Rockingham.
And he won it after he started in 30th position. And our Winner's Circle interview has been brought to you by Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. And we'll be back to have some closing comments as we wrap things up from North Carolina Motor Speedway. Show you the top 10 finishers here of this Goodwrench 500. Of course, Neil Bonnet was the winner, started in 30th, and that's the furthest back than any driver has ever started in a race here at Rockingham and won. Previously, 21st was the furthest back, and this was Neil's 3rd win here at this racetrack. Quick comments from Gary Nelson.
Well, it was quite a race, an endurance race definitely, but there's still 5 cars in the lead lap at the finish. 1 Pontiac, 2 Oldsmobiles, a Ford, and a Chevrolet. So quite a bit of parity in NASCAR today.
Ned Jarrett.
We expected, we saw the cars running high and we saw them running low. Gave the fans a real variety out there on the racetrack. The tire situation was the story here today, no question about that.
And our thanks to SK Systems for the race strategy advisor, which we'll be utilizing at all Winston Cup races this year. Once again, in victory lane for the Goodwrench 500 was Neil Bonnet, and he maintains the points lead in the Winston Cup battle. My thanks to Jerry Punch, to Dick Berggren, and to Larry Newber for his reports in Penn Central, and for, of course, Gary Nelson and Ned Jarrett in the booth. This is Bob Jenkins. We'll see you next in Darlington. For now, so long, everyone.